Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my very special live stream. As you can see, I look a little different today. Um, but anyway, welcome to book 4, part 6 of Peerless, which is actually the end of book 4. So I'm super excited about that as well. But yes, so logistics. This is a chill stream, which means that I will be talking to myself. I will be talking to my lovely book garden, and I will probably be talking to and about the book. I might also occasionally look up a word or two just for a little additional clarification. But if that's not your thing, maybe stick around and see. I know it's not everyone's, but you might enjoy it. You never know. Hi, Annika. Thank you very much. No, I'm very excited. I was really happy when I found like the mermaid kind of scale print thing. It was perfect. The shoulders are good. They kind of slipped down a little bit, but they're perfect. And then I found the snake earrings. And I was like, yes, yes. Thank you very much. How are you doing today, Annika? Um, while you answer, oh yeah, it all works so well together. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I'm very happy and excited to do this on Saturday. I cannot wait. I'm super excited. I've got everything laid out. I got the nails painted, not well, but they're painted, and that's what counts. No, I'm very excited for this weekend. But I think the ears are a nice touch as well because all of them demons seem to have them pointy ears. So it's my first excursion with spirit gum glue. So yeah, freaking out because I leave in 2 days. Yes, you're gonna have a fantastic time. Oh yeah, I gotta be a pointy ear boy. Hello, Chi Chi Kiki. Welcome. How are you doing this Wednesday? Thank you. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Oh, I hope you have a fantastic time. I know you're gonna have a fantastic time, Annika. You'll definitely have to tell us all about it when you come back. Oh yes. This is not a sponsored stream. I don't make anything. If I ever do make anything, it will be a very interesting day. And you will probably know, but no, I am not sponsored. I do this strictly because I can and I enjoy getting this stuff out there. I enjoy chatting with my lovely book garden and just being here and sharing this with everyone. So, uh, oh my gosh, I'm stuttering. Pronunciation is hard. I am not a native speaker, and I will probably stumble over words and say things incorrectly. If I am completely butchering something, feel free to let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to fix it. But yeah, I'm human. I make mistakes. I am thankfully much more awake than I was yesterday, so I will be mumbling less, I hope. I'm also feeling a bit better. So, all good things. I'm trying to see if I forgot anything. Ah, yes. I have never read this series before, and this author does like to get detailed. And that also means they get detailed about some potentially very triggering situations. Since I have never read this before, I cannot always guess when those things might occur. So if you are here during the live, it's kind of a at your own risk thing. I don't see it being triggering this episode, but I could be very wrong. If you are watching this later, you have a little bit more of a heads up because there will be a trigger warning in the title if that such occurrence does occur, as well as a simple non-triggering, hopefully, description of what occurred, summary, not description, what occurred in the description down below at the video, as well as a timestamp with trigger warning covering when that occurs. So I think that about wraps up everything. I decided to take Friday afternoon off to finish prepping because I underestimated all the stuff I still have to do. That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. Okay, so now that we did that, I want to show off this belt because this is what took so much time. And like, this was like the majority of, I mean, other than these, which like are super cool too, but like I am super proud of this. There's so much detail that went into it. And like, just I had to show that off a little. I mean, I also embroidered this, but like that was quick and easy. But yeah, I'm super excited about this, and it's comfy. It's pretty comfy. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lot more time than I was expecting. Shocker, went into this. But I feel really happy with it. I'm excited to share it with others at the convention. But yeah, anyone else have anything they want to add? Anything they're excited about this weekend? I know we're not Thursday yet, which Chuaning belt. Yeah, no, I believe it. Always takes longer than you expect. Yeah. No, I think we'll kind of just get started then. This wig actually, okay, last thing. Working on a prop and it's turning out so well. Oh, I'm so excited, Chi Chi. You're gonna have to share it either in the post. I haven't checked posts in a while. Hang on, let me take a look and see. Oh, I see that people have been voting, and Copper Coins is at 50%. Other World's books, depend on the bean counters, 21. My Husband and I Sleep in a Coffin is at 29. Ooh, we have some results. It's very exciting. All right, let's see. Oh, very nice convention. Picture. Okay, I haven't really missed anything. Okay, good. I'm glad. Okay. There we go. Grumpy Dragon for the win. Oh, I'm going to let it go until we finish this stream. So anyone who has not voted, there's a poll on in posts. So go ahead and vote. Once we finish or get to like the last 2 streams of Peerless for book 5, that's when I will look and see who's winning. And I will probably make like another little announcement video about it, but yes. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. 8:30. Okay. Hello, Angela. Welcome. We have a Zuzzy Lang cosplay going right now because I'm going to be debuting this weekend and kind of promised I'd do a little sneak peek. How you doing tonight? Hello, Truffle. I also forgot to say hello. I just saw your Grumpy Dragon comment, but how are you doing as well? We're going to actually just go ahead and get started while you answer. But yeah. All right. So, they and Chubu Chu and Feng Xiao ended up kind of inciting a riot. They caused it because they let all of the refugees but yeah, Los Angeles Guinea Pig Rescue will let people who donate to them name a guinea pig. They're expecting a lot of babies. Ooh, that's exciting. I might have to check that out. Give them a fun name. Maybe name one of them Keyfree. That'd be fun. Have to be like a tan, or I don't, maybe if they have a white guinea pig. But yes. So there was a riot, and kind of the chaos that Chubuchu and Feng Xiao had brought. I broke a bunch of people out of prison and told them where you live. Yeah, that was basically the vibe. Very, very good summary there, Truffle. But yeah, the riot at the governor's residence was quickly quelled. The victims and death row prisoners had been locked away for a long time. They were greatly weakened. Under the leadership of the Shu Yui guards, they relied on the strength of their own outrage and the lack of sentries to capture the residents. The instant Chubuchu arrived with soldiers, the situation was swiftly contained. Pei Jingzi, arriving shortly after, breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Chubuchu had avoided harming any of the refugees. Perhaps his relief was too obvious because Chubuchu's mouth curved faintly. Were you worried I'd use the refugees to free us from our predicament, then order them killed to tie up loose ends? Pei Jingzi went red. It was a foolish thought. Oh, that'd be cute. One of the Navy babies to be named Soot Sprite. Cute. I may not be a good person, but I have no interest in attacking unarmed civilians. If not for the flooding and Yang Yun's corruption, they'd just be ordinary people. They'll be our best witnesses against Yang Yun, Wu Yi, and the others. Go gather everyone up and take a tally. Keep them in one place. Don't let them run around and cause trouble. Then search the governor's residence. Yang Yun has hidden a portion of the grain here somewhere. When you find it, make some kanji for these people. Let them eat first. Pei Jingzi snapped to attention and hurried away at once, completely forgetting that Chubuchu was the chief of the Shuyue Bureau and technically had no power to give him orders. Rong Qing piped up. Chu Xiansheng, how can I help? The death row prisoners are mixed in with the victims of the flood. Find the register and figure out who the real criminals are, and who were unjustly imprisoned by Yang Yun. It'll be hard work. But this kind of work was Rong Qing's specialty. He eagerly got started. The governor's residence was in shambles thanks to the refugees, and many had taken advantage of the chaos to plunder Yang Yun's more valuable treasures. Chubuchu, however, had ordered the two Shuyue guards to focus their search on Yang Yun's study. Now they reported that they had indeed found something strange there. Yang Yun was hauled over, his hands tied behind his back. Chubuchu led him into the study where the floor tiles under the desk had been removed, revealing a dark hole. Important dignitaries often had separate entrances to their rooms. Even then, if they had unsavory secrets to keep, they also needed places like this to hide the evidence. Yang Yun was unsurprised to see the secret chamber opened. He'd been pale and silent this entire time, but now he spoke. Chubuchu, I can't stop you from going in, but I beg of you, please go alone. This matter concerns the reputation of the royal family. Unrelated persons must not know. Did you not think of the royal family's reputation when you did these things? Chubuchu asked curiously. Or did you remember that your surname is Yang only now? I guarantee there are no traps inside, cried Yang Yun hoarsely. But there are some things that only you should see. The Shuyue Bureau is bound by duty. There is nothing we cannot know, said Chubuchu coldly. Please don't be another dungeon. Yeah, no. For those of you who weren't here at a different stream, there was a triggering dungeon where Chubuchu gazed at him. The more he felt that Yang Yun resembled someone he had seen before. Chubuchu didn't comment on it. He asked the two Shuyue guards to send Yang Yun in first to light the lamp, then followed descending step by step down the stone staircase into the secret chamber. The candle flamed to life, and Chubuchu and the two Shuyue guards looked around, stunned. Oh boy. All right. So, just in case it is like another dungeon, I will mark down potential trigger. I'll put the time 15:45. Okay. Also, our counts. Injustice to service workers is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 39, with justice to service workers sitting at a slightly higher than usual 4. Injustice to animals and plants is sitting at a very sad 5, because it should be 0. Injustice to innocence is sitting at a 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26, with a half justice to innocence. Injustice to Paging Z is sitting at 15, with Injustice to Readers sitting at a crisp 3. And our shamelessness counter is sitting at a whopping 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 94. I promise there aren't any traps. Yeah, no one's gonna say that if there really aren't traps. Well, in one of those, Feng Xiao let the sparrow go. Alright. Chapter 147. The two Shuoyue guards had anticipated a room filled with gold and silver. Instead, numerous paintings adorned the walls of the small chamber, and several rolled-up scrolls lay scattered across the floor and table. I have a feeling it's probably going to be more sexy paintings. But Chubachu was stunned for another reason. He recognized the subject of the paintings. Standing with her head turned coyly over her shoulder, the upper half of her body bare. Half sprawled on the bed, holding her chest and partially exposed. Draped in fluttery gauzy fabric, the flesh underneath her just barely discernible. These weren't like Li Yan's vulgar and explicit paintings. The woman gazed from the paintings with half-lidded eyes or looked out over a fan, smiling warmly. From the tender beauty of a young girl to the elegance of a married woman, the paintings showed the same subject across the years in various styles. The painter had truly captured her charm, each frown and smile vividly portrayed. Chubuchu didn't need to wait for Yang Yun to confirm. He already knew the subject's identity. I didn't realize you shared such a past with Princess Li Ping. Chubuchu glanced at Yang Yun, a shadow of a smile tugging at his lips. Although I did think of the princess's kept man when I saw you. Yang Yun sat upright with his eyes closed, feigning the inability to hear or speak. He was powerless to stop this, so his only option was to maintain his silence. The two Shuoyue guards exchanged uneasy glances, a chill creeping up their spines. The secrets of the royal palace were not something they should be privy to, yet Chubuchu didn't allow them to leave. He pointed at the bricks behind them. Crack open the wall with your blades. A spasm crossed Yang Yun's face. He opened his eyes and finally stopped pretending to be mute. How did you know? The two Shuoyue guards obeyed. Their sharp blades scraped the wall, sending white powder fluttering down and quickly revealing a golden gleam beneath. Lord Chief, continue. Blades scraped along the crack again, widening it in all directions. Oh, really? Truffle, that wasn't who I thought it would be. Anyone else having interruptions? Really? I haven't gotten any notifications about stream interruptions, but let me know if anyone else is, and I'll quickly reset it. Behind the thin layer of flour paste lay a solid wall of shimmering gold bricks stacked from floor to ceiling. It was only a single wall, but it was astonishing to behold. There's a strange crevice in the corner here, one of the Shuoyue guards exclaimed. He pressed his fingers into the crevice and slowly pried it open. Bit by bit, the wall parted to reveal a hidden passage leading to a brightly illuminated hall. Flickering candlelight hinted at an exit at the far end. Huh. I thought it was going to be Xiaoxian. Fair guess. If it keeps doing that, Truffle, let me know, and I will reset it. There's a strange crevice in the corner here, one of the Shuoyue guards exclaimed. He pressed his fingers into the crevice and slowly pried it open. Bit by bit, the wall parted to reveal a hidden passage leading to a brightly illuminated hall. Flickering candlelight hinted at an exit at the far wall. Chubachu gasped in astonishment. Commandery Governor Yang, your secret chambers are far more impressive than those of the former mogul of the Northwest, Duan Chi-hu. Someone ought to have brought this county bumpkin here to witness the splendor of the imperial family. How dare you slander the Yang family, shouted Yang Yun in anger. You're just a dog my aunt raised. Ah! A Shuoyue guard had kicked him to the ground and began to beat him mercilessly. Within just a few blows, his nose was bruised and his face was swollen. Within just a few blows, Chubachu pretended not to notice, choosing instead to admire the golden wall. He gazed at it intently, as if flowers might bloom from its gilded surface. As Yang Yun's shouts devolved into pitiful wails, he turned back in feigned surprise. Commandery Governor Yang, despite your embezzlement of the court's grain, your disregard for human life, and your desecration of the princess, our nation has laws to address such crimes. You can continue to punish yourself like this, but the Ministry of Justice will not plead for mercy on your behalf before His Majesty. Yang Yun no longer tried to speak. Lord Chief, the passage leads above ground to a courtyard with a woman and 2 mute servants inside. The Shuoyue guard, who had gone to investigate, quickly returned with the woman in tow. She was dressed in lavish robes and appeared about 20 years old. Her figure was graceful and her face like a painting, though her panicked expression somewhat dulled her beauty. Hello, Sanvi. Welcome. We just started a little bit ago, and we found Yang Yun's secret hideaway. It had lots of gold, erotic pictures of the princess, and apparently led to a courtyard with a woman and 2 mute servants. So that is where we are right now. But you, welcome. How are you today? Okay. As soon as Chubachu laid eyes on her, a smile spread across his face. Commandery Governor Yang, it seems that being stationed so far from the eyes of the Emperor has enabled you to become as carefree as any immortal. The woman bore an unmistakable likeness to the young Princess Li Ping. So he's another of the this guys. Great. I mean, I was guessing so, but like further confirmation. Isn't he like her cousin? Am I reading this wrong? Now can you make them leave? Yang Yun asked hoarsely. Chubachu waved his hand, and the Shuoyue guards escorted the woman out of the chamber. Her expression was a mix of confusion and helplessness, and she glanced repeatedly over at Yang Yun, who didn't spare her a single glance. Speak. Chubachu adjusted the collar of his cloak and settled into a cross-legged seat on the floor. With his hands and legs bound tightly, Yang Yun didn't have a similar luxury. He could barely sit or stand and was forced to lean uncomfortably against the wall. What do you want me to say? He asked icily. You've seen everything. What more is there? I have no interest in whether you're no. Starting that over. I have no interest in whether your fascination with Princess Li Ping is one-sided or mutual. As for the embezzlement, that matter will be dealt with by the Ministry of Justice and the Imperial Censorate. What I truly wish to understand is your connection to the 13 floors of Yunhai. If I tell you, what will you give me in return? Yang Yun asked, attempting to bargain. I think they are cousins, though I'm not really sure. Okay. The corner of Chubachu's mouth quirked up. I'll burn all the paintings here and let that woman go. What happened in this chamber will remain between us. A clandestine relationship between two cousins in the Yang family could never see the light of day, especially since one of them was a princess and the empress of the previous dynasty. I've not seen the princess since I took office in Guangqian Commandery in the first year of Kai Huang era. Yang Yun returned defensively. These paintings don't prove anything! Chubachu sneered. And what about the woman outside? And the princess's former retainer? The emperor and empress have both seen him. What will they think, I wonder? According to law, as a Yang, you'd normally face merely exile for your crimes here. But should they discover the truth, you can forget keeping your life. If that's true, then they won't let you escape either, Yang Yun retorted. Chubachu coughed into his hand. If Commandery Governor Yang refuses to speak, perhaps I shall ask someone else. County Lieutenant Wu Yi and your associates must know something. With that, he made tries. Wait! Yang Yun blurted. Chubachu looked back. With a hint of reluctance, Yang Yun continued. I only intended to sell the grain for a little profit. I never plotted rebellion. The idea of donating grain for tax exemption was suggested to me by a man named Shao. Now that he'd been exposed, it was only natural that he'd push all the blame onto the 13 floors of Yunhai. Chubachu didn't attempt to determine whether or not this was true. Instead, he simply asked, what was his name? Why did you believe him? Lord Xiao had come to Guangqian Commandery 3 years prior, whereupon he had met the recently promoted Yang Yun through the Li family's connections. Knowing Yang Yun had a fondness for wealth, Lord Xiao gave him 2 gold Buddha statues and quickly forged a friendship with him. He then offered several crafty ideas to the ambitious new official. Yang Yun gradually began to view Lord Xiao as a clever and resourceful ally, and the two grew even closer. Lord Xiao had claimed to be a southerner, traveling back and forth across the Yangtze River to trade spices. Yang Yun knew the Xiao were a major clan in the southern dynasty, but chose not to probe further. After all, Lord Xiao's numerous trips brought him significant profits. But even this wasn't enough to quench Yang Yun's appetite for riches. He next set his sights on the court's granaries. Based on what he had heard so far, Chubachu was almost certain this Lord Xiao was Xiao Lu himself. 3 years ago, as the 13 floors of Yunhai sought to expand their influence, it would have required extensive provisions and financial support. Xiao Lu had bribed Yang Yun with 2 gold Buddhas, but reaped even greater benefits from the tax exemption policy. Chubachu knew, without asking, that the taxes employed by the imperial court over the past 2 years had found their way into the pockets of local landlords. Xiao Lu must have also had a hand in that, gaining even more significant profits. If they had stopped there instead of misappropriating the relief grain issued by the court, or Frong Qing had been slightly less earnest, their operation might have continued undisturbed. After this year's flood, it was Lord Xiao who encouraged me to pocket all the grain. Chubachu raised a hand to interrupt him. That's not true. Yang Yun was confused. What's not true? I don't believe Lord Xiao is the type to be so short-sighted. He's already reaped substantial gains from you and understood not to bite off more than he can chew. Acting cautiously allows one to achieve much more in the long run. In your impatience to snatch up all the grain, you left nothing for the flood victims. That's what gave you away. Even Huang Le realized the dire consequences and chose to discreetly provide us with information rather than take the fall. Looking at Yang Yun, Chu said slowly, I advise you to be honest. Don't think you can escape judgment simply because Lord Xiao isn't here. Was this your idea or his? Yang Yun's eyes flickered. He refused to meet Chu's gaze. Of course it was his idea! Chu sneered. Commandery Governor Yang, Lord Xiao is from the 13 floors of Yunhai. He's a man brimming with ambition and ulterior motives. He cooperated with you for 2 years because he saw long-term benefit for himself. It was never for some paltry relief grain. If you hadn't fallen out with him, you wouldn't have been so easily caught. Lord Xiao is skilled enough to hold his own against me for at least a few rounds. Yet now, he's discarded you like a pawn, fully aware that you've lost your value. Yang Yun paled. I don't know what you're talking about, he rasped. No matter, Chu replied. You can take your time explaining after we defeat Lord Xiao. The Shuyue Bureau has plenty of methods to ensure you speak the truth. I'll hand these paintings and that woman over for the Empress to handle. Chu! Yang Yun cried, furious. Didn't you just promise me? You lying scoundrel! What did I promise? Chu asked innocently. I can't remember. You son of a bitch! The gold bricks weren't firmly embedded in the wall. Chu easily pried one loose and brought it crashing down on Yang Yun's head and shoulders. Help! Murder! Yang Yun screamed in agony, but his bound legs prevented him from moving more than a few steps. He stumbled and fell to the ground, his pained cries and curses transforming into desperate howls. Stop! Stop! I'll tell you everything! His hair was disheveled, his face streaked with tears and snot. Gone was his neatly groomed appearance and dignified bearing. Shouldn't you be happy I hit you with one of your beloved golden bricks? Chu sighed regretfully. Unfortunately, I'm feeling a bit weak, or you could have been even happier. Thank heavens an invalid like you lacks the strength, Yang Yun thought. You'd have beaten me to death. Chu seized his collar and yanked him forward. Considering the lives you've taken by stealing grain, if I were to kill you here, it would be too harsh a punishment, Chu said. He regarded Yang Yun as if regarding a corpse. A chill washed over the governor, and his body stiffened. However, Chu continued, I am an official of Great Su. I must abide by the law and cannot enact punishment on you myself. He patted Yang Yun's cheek. Commandery Governor Yang, do you suffer from seizures? Why did you suddenly slam yourself into the wall and hurt yourself like that? It is so cold and poetic. Yep. Yang Yun was silent. Come, Chu said mildly. I'll have the doctor treat you when we return. He extended a hand to help Yang Yun up, but the man recoiled in terror as if encountering a demon. Chu ignored him and returned up above ground to the study. As he ordered the Shuyue guards to bring Yang Yun up, the guards of the commandery governor's residence timidly brought him a letter. Upon it was no address, no signature, only a single verse. Though our separation is brief, the longing grows apace. In Xiao's tea house, an old friend awaits. When Pei Jingzi and Qiao Xian approached, they found him still silently holding the letter. Chu Xiansheng, who is that letter from? Chu came back to himself. He said coldly, Xiao Lu. Xiao Xian's expression flickered, but Pei Jingzi gasped. The pavilion leader of the 13 floors of Yunhai? The demon tyrant? Chubuchu had to smile at that moniker. Xiao Lu's appearance, approach, and manner of speaking were all incongruous with the image of a demon tyrant. If anyone embodied a demon tyrant, perhaps it was Feng Xiao. Had to just slip in that little slight right there. He couldn't help himself. Only once had Chubuchu and Xiao Lu met. The few times they'd come up against each other, they'd cross blades from afar. Both sides had earned their share of victories and losses. The 13 floors of Yunhai had successively lost Yu Xiu, Go Un, Duan Qihu, Feng Xiaolian, and several other capable agents. But Go Un had been from Go Gieru, so Xiao Lu had used Feng Xiao to eliminate him and gain control over the Bu Yio sect. Duan Qihu had turned against the 13 floors, unwilling to join them in rebellion, so Xiao Lu had taken the chance to dispose of him as well. On the other hand, Chubuchu's side had briefly obtained the Jade of Heaven Lake, only to allow it to fall back into enemy hands. Even now, Chubuchu had yet to capture Xiao Lu. They were evenly matched. Every time Chubuchu faced off against Xiao Lu, even he couldn't predict the winner until the very last moment. I'll go, Lord Chief. I'll go, Lord Chief. Xiao Xian dropped to one knee, bowing her head to await his command. You wish to go? Chubuchu looked at the bun atop her head, his expression inscrutable. Yes. Xiao Lu's martial arts are on par with Feng Xiao's. He is likely to appear in person this time, and you stand no chance against him. Even so, do you still wish to go? I do. Pei Jingzi looked at the two of them in confusion, but didn't interrupt. Then you may, said Chubuchu. Xiao Xian tightened her grip on her scabbard and rose to her feet. Come back alive. Xiao Xian's heart trembled. This subordinate will do her best. Pei Jingzi hurriedly intervened. Xiao Lu is incredibly strong. How do you expect to beat him alone? Xiao Xian ignored him and smoothly leapt onto her horse. With a clear cry, she and the steed galloped away and disappeared into the vast night. Were you sending her to her death? Pei Jingzi shouted at Chubuchu, unable to contain himself. He mounted his horse and chased after her. Chubuchu watched them leave and said to Guan Shanhai, we're going to Feng Yun We're going to Feng Yun Tavern. Guan Shanhai was puzzled. Isn't Deputy Chief Feng already there? Chubuchu sighed. That's why we have to go. This letter proves there's no one at Xiao's tea house. Xiao Lu will do everything in his power to kill Feng Xiao at Feng Yun Tavern. Understanding dawned on Guan Shanhai. You deliberately sent Xiao Xian to Xiao's tea house to save her life. Since she's made her choice, I'll protect her. Chubuchu mounted his own horse and spurred it to a gallop. Let's go be the heroes who rescue the beauty. Guan Shanhai was seriously injured and had yet to heal. At these words, he sputtered and almost choked to death right there and then. One of us is sick and the other is wounded. How are we supposed to rescue anyone? It'll just be a snack for our enemies. But Chubuchu was already riding away. Guan Shanhai had no choice but to steel himself to risk his life at his lord's side as he urged his horse in pursuit. In Guangxian County, there was a street with a lovely name, the Long Alley of Peach Blossoms. At the end of this street lay Feng Yun Tavern. Come midnight, 3 figures stood before the tavern door, identical in all ways, from their silhouettes to their facial features. The heavy scent of blood wafted off of them. Had they not been cloaked in black robes, the crimson stains would have been visible on their garments. Whether it was their blood or the blood of their foes was impossible to discern. One Feng Xiao held a blood-stained fan. He said in disdain, "Can I please put this thing down now?" Another Feng Xiao kindly reminded him, "Even if you throw away the fan, your clothes are stained with blood." The first Feng Xiao stomped his foot. "You're awful. Are you suggesting I take off my clothes?" The second Feng Xiao said indignantly, "When did I say that?" The third Feng Xiao couldn't contain himself any longer. "Can you stop making those expressions with my face?" So I kind of forgot a little bit. There were basically Shadow Clone Jutsu Feng Xiao, and that is how he survived the ambush, basically. So I guess we'll see the trick now of what happened. The first Feng Xiao smiled sweetly. "Deputy Chief, I want to return to my own face as well, but look, these stupid dogs are blocking the way and refusing to leave. Can't you drive them off? Heaven knows I need to bathe and change my clothes. The smell of blood is making me nauseous." "Chin Miao Yu," Feng Xiao warned. "Try acting cute with my face again, and you won't like the consequences." The first Feng Xiao finally fell silent. The second Feng Xiao opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted by the third. "Ming Yue, shut up." Just ahead, in the middle of the street, the young leader of the Jinhuan Guild, Lang Du, stood with 6 of his own martial experts, waiting in formation. This was the second challenge. Feng Xiao, Ming Yue, and Qin Miao Yu had spent 2 full hours eliminating 11 experts in the tavern. The only one who'd managed to slip their net was Yuan Sanxi, and he had fled with grave injuries. Only Feng Xiao would end up fighting with himself. That's true, Truffle. But for this, they paid a significant price. Qin Miaoyu's right arm hung at an unnatural angle, blood dripping steadily from the wound. Her attempts at humor were merely to distract herself from the pain. Ming Yue, beside her, had suffered a wound to his abdomen. Though he had sealed his acupoints to staunch the bleeding, the damage to his cultivation was severe. He required urgent treatment. As for Feng Xiao, it was impossible to tell if he had sustained any injuries at all. He looked the same as ever. "Lang Du, adopted son of Ning Shiwu. Since your father doesn't dare face us himself, he sent you to meet your end. If I were in your shoes, I'd leave while I still can," Qin Miaoyu sighed. "By joining the 13 floors of Yunhai, Ning Shiwu has made a tremendous gamble with the lives and fortunes of the entire Jinhuan Guild," Ning Yue added. "You're his adopted son, but you also serve as the young leader of the Jinhuan Guild. Whether for the sake of righteousness or your own personal interest, you should know what choice to make." Both Qin Miaoyu and Ming Yue had impersonated Feng Xiao, but though their act had been impressive, Qin Miaoyu was a mediocre martial artist, and Ming Yue was unaccustomed to playing the zither. Feng Xiao had done most of the work. Their enemies wouldn't fall for the ruse a second time. Lang Du truly embodied his surname, Cold. His face was as calm as still waters as he drew his blade from its scabbard, his gaze fixed on Feng Xiao. "It's true that you've just defeated 12 experts in a row, but even I can see that you've sustained injuries. Should you manage to survive this round, there are more enemies waiting for you. This time, let me use a weapon I'm actually skilled with." Feng Xiao sneered. "Play cute with me while wearing my face one more time, and I'll sew your mouth shut." The instant he said the word shut, he lunged toward Lang Du. Lang Du's eyes went wide. He'd known of Feng Xiao's exceptional strength. Even experts like Yu Xiu and Feng Yun had struggled against him. Lang Du and the 6 experts of the Jin Huan Guild could only far worse. Fare worse. Despite their impressive titles, they were unlikely to last more than a few moves against a martial artist of Feng Xiao's caliber. However, that was under normal circumstances. Feng Xiao had just emerged from a ferocious battle in the tavern. No matter how skilled he was, he had to be exhausted. If Lang Du could seriously injure him, the knight's endeavor would not be in vain. Even so, he was caught off guard by the sheer speed of Feng Xiao's qinggong. Feng Xiao sailed toward Lang Du like a ghost, silent as the flowing clouds. The moment Feng Xiao appeared in front of him, Lang Du unsheathed his blade, but before he could strike, a powerful force seized his hand and forced his saber back into its scabbard. Excruciating pain ripped through his chest as the meridians of his heart were severed. Dang! Oh, I wonder if that's Miao. Lang Du fell down dead, face frozen in an expression of disbelief. They did not draw that out. Wow. The 6 experts erupted into shouts, all moving to avenge their young guild leader. Feng Xiao shot into the air. In a single step, he was behind them, turning to raise his hand as zither strings shot out and targeted 3 of his attackers. Of the 5 strings he'd brought, 2 had been lost in the tavern. He was left with only 3. At least 6 lives had been claimed by those 3 strings, and they stank of blood. Normally, Feng Xiao would have thrown them away in disgust, but tonight he had to hold his nose and reuse them. 6 experts, 3 strings. He could only strike half of his attackers. Ming Yue and Qing Miaoyu also sprang into action. Ming Yue wielded a long sword, while Qin Miaoyu flourished her sleeves, the pair's murderous intent converging into a chilling light that surged toward their foes. Thunder rumbled ominously overhead, and the clouds crackled with lightning, an omen of storms to come. The sound echoed like the beat of a war drum, urging on the night's bloody slaughter. On the long alley of peach blossoms, what fell upon the dark stones wasn't flower petals, but splatters of blood that bloomed across the stones. That's how you know a martial artist is tired. They don't bother to play around. Yeah, that's fair. Hang on. What fell upon the dark stones wasn't flower petals, but splatters of blood that bloomed across the stones. From now on, perhaps the name would carry a different connotation. The battle sprawled over the street. Blades flashed and glinted, while bloodlust boiled the air. Both sides of the street lay in eerie silence, as if the surrounding houses were uninhibited. 6 people fell to the ground alongside their young guild leader, one after another, their eyes wide open in death. Qin Miaoyu staggered 2 steps before her legs buckled. She collapsed, retching blood. At the sight of her, Feng Xiao abruptly said, "Chu Chu looks much better when he vomits blood." Qin Miaoyu was speechless. She longed to grab one of the Jin Huan Guild sabers and hurl it at Feng Xiao, but she didn't dare. Since she'd switched allegiances from the Bu Yio sect to the Jijian Bureau, Feng Xiao's face wasn't. The man was terrifying. Ming Yue, though not spitting blood, was struggling to stand. His face had taken on an alarming blue cast. He stumbled over to a wall and slid down to regulate his breathing, aware that greater challenges lay ahead. "Well, sizz there!" Qin Miaoyu cried out. "What are you waiting for? Get the hell out here!" "You're injured. Save your strength," Ming Yue cautioned. Miaoyu cried out. "What are you waiting for? Get the hell out here!" "You're injured. Save your strength," Ming Yue cautioned. Feng Xiao gave him a light kick. Can you stop making such an honest expression with my face? But they didn't have long to wait. The enemy had answered Qin Miaoyu's call and gotten the hell out there. This time, it was only one person. He came from the far end of the street, sauntering toward them as if he had come to Long Alley of Peach Blossoms to admire the flowers rather than to take their lives. He held an umbrella overhead. At first, Qin Miaoyu thought he was a passerby who had mistakenly wandered over. She urged him gently. This place is dangerous. You should go. Feng Xiao frowned. He only looks respectable. Do you really think an ordinary person would take a stroll here in the dead of the night? Keep this up, and you can forget about staying in the Jijian Bureau. I don't suffer fools. We're all exhausted, said Qin Miaoyu indignantly. You want to keep fighting and killing? If we can say a few kind words and convince him to leave, then won't that save us a lot of trouble? Meng Xiao shattered her fantasy without mercy. Enough. That's the pavilion leader of the 13 floors of Yunhai. What? Qin Miaoyu stared in shock, looking back at the newcomer. It was hard to believe this gentle, elegant, and refined young man was, in fact, their most formidable enemy. Xiao Lu chuckled softly and stopped a short distance away. Deputy Chief Fang, how are you? If you want to fight, let's fight, Feng Xiao said impatient. Don't waste my time. Xiao Le looked at him with sympathy. You've just been injured. If we fight now, I fear you won't stand a chance. Better to rest a bit first. I prefer a fair fight. If you want a fair fight, why did you send so many people earlier? Feng Xiao wanted to shout. But on consideration, he decided to save his strength for the inevitable confrontation. He knew Xiao Le was right. Many martial artists could detect and influence each other's qi. He could feel Xiao Lu's presence, which meant Xiao Lu could sense his condition too. Qin Miaoyu was as good as empty air. There was no point relying on her. Ming Yue was strong, but he wouldn't stand a chance against Xiao Lu, especially in his current state. As for Feng Xiao, although he would have been happy to fight Xiao Lu under normal circumstances, the battle in the tavern had drained much of his strength. Lang Du's group had proved easier to handle than Yuan Sanxi's, but Feng Xiao's accumulated injuries had also been aggravated in the fight and were becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Xiao Le had planned it all out, but retreat was not an option. The moment Feng Xiao withdrew, Chu Bu would be in danger. That's sweet. That's really sweet. The last time we met, it must have been difficult for you to feign incompetence and lose to me. Someone as proud as you are must find it unbearable. I expect you'll do all you can to beat me today. But experts are everywhere in this world. It's a pity. Even if you manage to beat me, you still won't be the best, Feng Xiao said. Xiao Lu smiled faintly. Why would I want to be the best? I am merely a rebel, not a member of the Jianghu. Are you worried I'll harm Chubuchu? Don't worry, Deputy Chief Fang. I won't kill him. The only one I want dead today is you. As his last words rang out, the sound of galloping hooves echoed in the distance. The two men fell silent, listening intently. Through the night fog, they spotted a tall and slender figure charging toward them on horseback, cloak billowing behind him in the wind. Xiao Lu stared as he recognized the rider. He turned to Feng Xiao, who appeared equally surprised. The newcomer pulled back on his reins, and the horse reared up with a long whinny. Chief Chu, Feng Xiao scoffed, his expression icy. You have a nose as keen as a dog's. You show up wherever there's trouble. Xiao Lu is my prey. Today, it's the Jijian Bureau who will capture him. If you dare interfere, I'll kill you first. Fang Yun Tian. Chuba Chu's expression was obscured by the fog. Only his familiar voice remained unchanged. The question you asked me yesterday, I can answer it now. My answer is, I would. Feng Xiao's breath caught. What had he asked him yesterday? Would you entrust your back to me? Okay. Real quick, Truffle. How is the internet? Is it still buffering? Because I can reset it now before we start. You know what? I'm just gonna do that. It will literally just be a moment. Okay, we're back. Okay, I hope that's better. Okay. 58, 36, 45. Okay. Chapter 148. The night mist clung to the man's silhouette, but Feng Xiao could visualize it without needing to look. A slender figure clad in wide-sleeved robes that whispered in the autumn breeze. My cat just got so comfy my lap right as I was about to get up. Of course. A slender figure clad in wide-sleeved robes that whispered in the autumn breeze. If the wind picked up or a particularly frosty gust hit, it might easily fell this invalid and leave him bedridden for weeks. Perhaps it would put him in his grave, and the world would be rid of one more scourge. The man's lips were very thin. Right now, they'd be pressed tight against the cold. The mouth they belonged to mirrored the nature of its owner, harsh and merciless, faster and sharper than any sword, capable of making someone choke to death on their own rage. The hands gripping the reins would be pale, not from exertion, not exhaustion. Wow, I am messing up quite a bit on this paragraph. Not from exertion, but from the biting chill. This cool autumn weather was merely an inconvenience for others, but for Chubu Chu, it was a significant obstacle. The matter of Yang Yun must have been resolved by now. While others might have viewed the encounter as a deadly trial, Chubu Chu was accustomed to even greater twists and turns. He meticulously calculated the motives of those around him, and his presence here, now, was a clear indication that Yang Yun had posed no challenge at all. Chubu Chu should have been sitting in the governor's residence, holding a hand stove to warm himself as he gave orders and awaited reports of success. Not galloping here in the middle of the night to attend a far more dangerous appointment. The corners of Feng Xiao's mouth curled slightly, but his words cut like blades of frost. You'd what? Fall for my charms? Chubu Chu, you think too highly of yourself. You consider yourself clever, but in my eyes, you're no more than a withered branch on the very verge of death. If not for the name of the Shuyui Bureau, I'd have never bothered with you. Take a good look in the mirror. Is there anything about you worth my attention? There was no sound in the dark night. Feng Xiao's disdain echoed over the empty street. I'm afraid I'll lose my appetite if I keep looking at your face. Get the hell out of here before I get rid of you myself. Do you hear me? Go! Chuba Chu remained still, not dismounting, not even responding. Perhaps Feng Xiao's words had pricked him, for he lingered there in silence. Confused, Ming Yue looked at Feng Xiao. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could think of nothing to say. Qin Miao Yu sighed quietly. Who said women were the capricious ones? When men lied about their desires, they were the equal of any woman. Chu Xiansheng, you heard Deputy Chief Feng. Xiao Lu's tone was gentle, without a hint of anger. I believe I left a letter asking to meet you at Xiao's tea house. It's precisely because you invited me to Xiao's tea house that I knew you would come looking for Feng Xiao here, Chubuchu said, calmly. No one could tell whether Feng Xiao's words had affected him. Xiao Lu sighed. I didn't want to kill you, which is why I tried to mislead you. If you knew that, why walk willingly into danger? Yang Yun may be captured, but he won't tell us where the grain is hidden. Thus, I have no choice but to ask you, Pavilion Leader Xiao. It's gone, Xiao Lu said bluntly. All of it? Xiao Lu smiled. I gave you Yang Yun and took the grain. Isn't that fair? The man responsible is in custody, and you have an explanation for the Emperor. I'll consider the grain my reward. Chubuchu nodded. It is indeed fair. Chu Xian. Xiao Lu said good-naturedly. Though Fan Yun betrayed me, I've always admired you. You're two of a kind. So I know you're too proud to join my side without thinking it through. I'll deal with Feng Xiao first. With the Jijian Bureau out of the way, you'll have one less opponent. You'll have the best of both worlds. Isn't that wonderful? Of everyone present, only Feng Xiao posed a genuine challenge to Xiao Lu. He could have dispatched Chubuchu in an instant, yet he took time to patiently explain his intentions. Feng Xiao sneered in deep displeasure. Yeah, every time Feng Xiao opens his mouth, it's like that's some big talk for the guy who fell first. Well, it's kind of sweet, though, because it's clear he's trying to get him out of there. He's like, why'd you come back? I don't need you here. You're a waste of space. Go, get out of here. Because he's like, dude, you're gonna die. Like he's going to kill you. I think my ear is falling. It is sweet he wants to protect him. I agree, Annika. Of everyone present, only Feng Xiao posed a genuine challenge to Xiao Lu. He could have dispatched Chubuchu in an instant, yet he took time to patiently explain his intentions. Feng Xiao sneered in deep displeasure. Chubuchu looked toward Xiao Lu's right hand, obscured by his wide sleeve. He wasn't concealing it intentionally. Both his sleeves were of equal length, but his withered right arm was shorter than his left, leaving his right hand tucked out of view. If not for this disability and the scorn it provoked, Xiao Lu would likely occupy a high position in the Chen imperial court. Even with this disadvantage, had he been willing to set aside his pride, to flatter and submit to his superiors, in time his capabilities would have secured him a role as a general or minister. But Xiao Lu was too proud. He was indeed very much like Chubuchu, who had preferred to venture into the wilderness and perish rather than remain in the Chu residence and accept the food they disdainfully offered. In tumultuous times, anyone could become a voice of rebellion and question whether kings were born or made. Anyone could become a leader capable of heralding change. Xiao Lu's pride forbade him from bowing his head. It compelled him to choose the hardest path. The most chaotic periods of the Central Plains' history had passed. Although the world remained divided between the northern and southern dynasties, it was a far cry from the era of the 16 kingdoms 2 centuries prior. Xiao Lu had been born at an inopportune time. The heavens had endowed him with the potential to be a man of great change, yet the emerging Su dynasty loomed before him, and his intellectual equal, Chubuchu, stood in his way. Xiao Lu waited patiently for Chubuchu's response, fully aware he might simply be stalling for time. After the incident at Xixia Villa, Yang Yun had feared Chubuchu and his companions might uncover the grain and had agreed to meet Xiao Lu's demands. While Chubachu and his allies were dealing with the commandery governor, Xiao Le had been directing his men to transport the grain out of the country in batches. Feng Xiao's demise was merely a trophy to collect along the way. In this round of their game, Xiao Le knew he had already claimed victory and regained his lost ground. There's something I neglected to mention, Chubuchu said suddenly. Did you never wonder why I brought only a few people to Guangqian County? I didn't even post any Yue guards nearby, leaving us at a marked disadvantage against Yang Yun. It's because, before setting out, I deployed them elsewhere to complete a more crucial task. Fan Yun knew quite a bit about the 13 floors of Yunhai. With his help, and with a common enemy in Yu, pavilion leader Xiao, we successfully dismantled the villa called Lingbo. I believe the name must ring a bell for you. Chubuchu continued placidly. I heard Lingbo Villa housed most of the forces you've been relying on for years, while operating in the Southern Dynasty. While the leaders of the 33 rooms may not compare to those of the 13 floors, they are undoubtedly elite members of your organization, including several skilled in astronomy, geography, divination, mathematics, and various other disciplines. I just received word that 80 to 90% of those individuals have been eliminated, while the remaining were injured and fled amid the chaos. I fear they won't be much help moving forward. Pavilion leader Xiao must have invested considerable effort in recruiting those individuals. How unfortunate that while you were attending to us here, your own backyard was ablaze. Tell me, do you think the grain you got here was worth the annihilation of one of your lairs? I love when Chubuchu goes, oh, guess what I've been doing? Xiao Lu's eyes narrowed and the smile gradually faded from his lips. The corners of his mouth flattened to reveal a hint of coldness. Chubuchu, you always bring me such joyous surprises. If I'd discovered you sooner and brought you into the 13 floors of Yunhai then, the Su dynasty would be the ones in ruin now. After Fen Yun betrayed me, I shifted all my resources in the Southern dynasty elsewhere. I never imagined he would still find them. Pavilion leader Xiao, don't forget that Fan Yun has ties to the Emperor of Chen, Chubuchu replied. While he may oppose the growth of the Su dynasty, he certainly wouldn't let 13 floors of Yunhai become a threat to the south. As they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What's wrong with cooperating with him just this once? If your intention was to provoke me, you've succeeded. Xiao Lu stepped toward him as leisurely as before, but in the blink of an eye he was in front of Chubuchu. He snatched him off the horse, gripping his shoulder so tightly he couldn't move an inch. By the time Guan Shanhai reacted, it was too late. With a wave of his sleeve, Xiao Lu sent the guard crashing to the ground several yards away. The dull thud of his body hitting the stone made everyone wince. I am your greatest foe, not Feng Xiao, Chubuchu said. I'm the Empress's trusted aide, and my Yue bureau handles the most sensitive cases. Don't you want to capture me, torture me, and extract intel about the Northern Dynasty? Chubuchu's shoulder blade was being crushed under Xiao Lu's hand, and the agony made it nearly impossible for him to speak. Yet conversely, the pain sharpened his mind. He knew Xiao Lu wouldn't kill him, otherwise it would be Chubuchu's throat under his fingers rather than his shoulder. Whether Feng Xiao dies today or tomorrow makes no difference. Isn't a living Chubuchu much more valuable than a dead Feng Xiao? You refuse to join the 13 floors of Yunhai, said Xiao Lu softly. Why would I want a Chubuchu who'd rather die than submit? Chubuchu closed his eyes, attempting to steady his breathing amid the pain. I'll join. I ask Pavilion Leader Xiao to accept me. Xiao Lu chuckled. And then what? You'll become the next Fan Yun and betray me? Look at me, not my boyfriend, right? Within 3 years, I'll topple the southern dynasty for you. Chubuchu coughed a few times. He was as pale as a ghost. On the condition that you do not harm anyone here tonight. Xiao Lu sighed quietly. Is it worth it for a single Feng Xiao? Chubuchu's lips parted. Though he made no sound, Xiao Lu saw him mouth the words, worth it. Feng Xiao moved. He shouldn't have. After the injuries he'd sustained, he'd need to regulate his breathing for half a day at least before he had the strength to fight again. Yet he attacked with lightning speed, as swift and fluid as a wisp of smoke or cloud as he swept toward Xiao Lu. Regardless of how confident Xiao Lu was of his victory, when faced with a martial artist of Feng Xiao's caliber, even he couldn't fight while holding Chu Wuchu. He released him and met Feng Xiao's attack. Within seconds, they were embroiled in a fierce battle. Well, he's worth it. Yes. Chu Wuchu crumpled. His shoulder blade was shattered, leaving one side of his body immobilized. It was all he could do to simply lie there. So, I guess that would be technically considered shameless, so we're gonna bump it up to 95? Yeah, 95. I think it's 95. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, 95. Hello, Esper Lady. We're currently on our second chapter in. It's after we took care of Yang Yun and are now. Thank you. I'm really excited about it too. The shoulders keep kind of slipping a little, but it turned out really good. But yeah, we're now at the showdown between Xiao Lu, Chubuchu, and Feng Xiao. And Chubuchu just parted his lips after being asked, is it worth it for a single Feng Xiao? And Chubuchu's lips parted, though he made no sound. Xiao Lu saw him mouth the words, worth it. Yes, this is where we're at. I'm glad you're this excited, Esper Lady. Jin Miaoyu rushed over and helped him up. She gingerly examined his wound, gasping when she felt warm blood on her hand. I have medicine for internal external energies in my lapels, Chubuchu said. Whoop, wrong voice. The Shuiyue Bureau's chief's chronic illnesses had practically turned him into a doctor himself. Since he was often injured, he always carried medicine with him. Give them to Ming Yue and Guang Shanhai too. Jin Miaoyu wasted no time. She quickly retrieved the medicine bottle and shook out a large pill. Should this humble lady go to the tavern and find some water for you? No need. Upon witnessing someone with Feng Xiao's face call themselves a humble lady, Chubuchu's shoulder ached even more fiercely. He quickly sent her off to administer medicine to the others. It's kind of funny. But this is the picture they chose for us. So Xiao Lu and Chubuchu. Yeah, you can tell he's pissed. Before them, the battle between Feng Xiao and Xiao Lu had just begun. Yeah, no, that definitely looks like it hurts. Then again, Chubuchu might just bring down the Southern Empire for funsies. Yeah. In the eyes of onlookers, two figures resembled flickering shadows. At times, they clashed midair, at others, they appeared to materialize atop the tavern's roof. Speed against speed, force against force. The roof tiles shattered and split under their feet, and the roof collapsed with a resounding crash. Walls cracked, dust flew, and the battered tavern was reduced to rubble. Both were oblivious to the fact that their battleground had shifted from the tavern roof back to the street. The tiles splintered and flew, held aloft by the force of their chi as if they were mere toys, designed to test their strength. The debris formed a barrier that isolated Chubachu and the others from the conflict. Feng Xiao and Xiao Lu's movements suddenly slowed. Like sprays of ink ebbed away over white paper, the whirling tiles gradually fell aside, leaving the adversaries standing like a pair of jutting rocks teetering precariously at the edge of the cliff. Facing each other at a distance of an arm's length, the two men seemed as fragile as stacked eggs. One misstep would send them plummeting into the abyss below. Feng Xiao's martial arts had reached an extraordinary peak. After utilizing the two Sarira, his skills had ascended to even greater heights, easily placing him among the ranks of grandmasters. But Xiao Le was not one to be outdone. And not only was he strong, as he himself had implied, he had strength to spare. Ming Yue and Guang Shanhai were both competent martial artists, but even they couldn't gauge Xiao Lu's true strength. How absurd that rather than pursue greater achievements in martial arts, such a talented person had instead fixated on his desire to usurp the throne. And yet, how many of the Jianghu's countless experts had met their own downfall in their quest for martial supremacy? Perhaps no one could say Xiao Lu had made the wrong choice. Everyone had their own ambitions. Qin Miaoyu watched him intently as he fought. Xiao Le used the Jade of Heaven Lake, she cried in dismay. Others, the jade had vanished. Until now, its whereabouts had been a mystery. Apparently, Xiao Le had put it to good use. In the Yugong city, Qin Miaoyu had briefly possessed the Jade of Heaven Lake and secretly used it to enhance her training, gaining some insight into its wonders. If she hadn't, she would never have been a strong enough martial artist to deceive the enemy into thinking she was Feng Xiao, even for a moment. Despite her limited knowledge, the Jade of Heaven Lake had significantly enhanced Qin Miaoyu's internal strength. Such a tool would be even more effective in Xiao Lu's hands. Perhaps he'd already absorbed the entire stone. No wonder he exuded such confidence. With his vast internal strength, he might have no equal in the Jianghu. Although Feng Xiao possessed the enhancement of the Sarira, could he truly compare? Qin Miaoyu dared not say any more for fear of distracting Feng Xiao. When confronting such a formidable opponent, even the slightest misstep could determine the outcome of the battle. Her thoughts raced. Feng Xiao and Xiao Le swept toward each other. The shattered tiles surrounding them seemed to respond even faster than the two combatants, as if held in a massive invisible hand that tightened its grip. The fragments exploded with an earth-shaking boom, scattering shards in all directions. Oh boy. Same shoulder twice and it's not been fun either time. Yeah. I sprained my shoulder. I was helping catch a person that fell on the stairs and it hyperextended my shoulder. And it was painful and I literally had to go to physical therapy for it. So yeah, shoulder injuries are no joke. They connect to everything. Like people don't realize just how much your shoulders do for you until you hurt them and then it's like every little thing. Ah! Yeah. It's better now. All right, 149. 123. Okay. I'm so used to my glasses being here. I'm like, let me push up my glasses. Chapter 149. Hang on, there's like these little baby hairs that are tickling my neck and it's distracting. 149. Propelled by chi, the debris exploded outward. The onlookers had no time to dodge. Fragments of tile sliced toward them, opening bloody scratches on their heads and faces. Dislocated mine wiped out on my bike, then I landed funny on the street after a car swiped. Ugh. That's dislocated shoulders. Like, not only the shoulder popping it back in and all that, but like the muscle injuries from popping it back in. That's rough. I hope it's better. Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. Okay. The two fighters remained unscathed in the eye of the storm, shielded by their chi. Yet they faced no less pressure than the onlookers. Feng Xiao couldn't guess Xiao Lu's thoughts at that moment, but he himself only had one. When swimming against the current, one must keep pushing forward or be swept away. In their previous fight, Xiao Lu had concealed his identity and feigned incompetence. Feng Xiao had been unable to discern his true abilities. This time, though mentally prepared, he was still secretly shocked by the strength of his opponent. Xiao Lu, having fully absorbed the Jade of Heaven Lake, now possessed unfathomable internal power. Supported by this vast reservoir of energy, his martial arts had reached unprecedented heights. Feng Xiao destroying the tavern, their granary, well, their hidden granary, was set on fire. Like, these poor people. But even if his odds were slim, he couldn't afford to lose. Feng Yun Tavern lay in ruins around them. The two men traded strikes amid the debris, their palms colliding thrice. Xiao Lu sustained a blow to his shoulder, while Feng Xiao took a strike to the ribs. They both fell back 3 steps, but a keen observer could spot the subtle difference between them. Xiao Lu's steps were smaller than Feng Xiao's. But Xiao Lu didn't press his attack. He pulled back, waiting for Feng Xiao to reveal a weakness. Feng Xiao waited as well, secretly regulating his breathing. Qi rose from the danshin in one's lower abdomen, then split at the Bai Huai point at the top of the head, flowing down into the rest of the body in 2 streams. As he breathed, his injured meridians were soothed, showing gradual signs of recovery. But it wasn't enough. Xiao Lu wouldn't give him time to heal. He was only biding his time until he saw the perfect moment to strike. Qi swirled around them, current and countercurrent, gently testing one another. The instant one of them withdrew, the peaceful facade would drop, and the Qi would swirl up, savage and howling. Dark clouds swarmed overhead, and heavy raindrops began to fall. The combatants seemed not to notice as they let the rain soak their clothes. Feng Xiao closed his eyes, plunging himself into an endless darkness where light and shadow faded. His chi waned like rain clouds chased by the wind, struggling to gather despite the futility of their efforts. Xiao Lu shot forward. Brandishing a bare longsword, he moved with the same swiftness as his sword glare. It painted a dazzling streak through the rainy night as he hurtled toward Feng Xiao like a shooting star. Resigned, Feng Xiao watched him come. The sword glare bore down on him, yet he merely pressed a hand to his injured abdomen in apparent disregard for the danger. Qin Miaoyu gasped. Her sweaty palms were so cold she forgot she was still sitting in a puddle of muddy rainwater. Feng Xiao was their only hope right now. If he fell, Chubuchu might survive, but Xiao Lu would show no mercy to the rest. What was more, Qin Miaoyu originally hailed from the Buyeo sect, which was loyal to the 13 floors of Yunhai. She was a traitor to Xiaolu. Initially, she joined the Jijian Bureau merely to save herself, but over time she grew accustomed to her new life. The Buyeo sect's members were spies and assassins. They couldn't operate in the open. While the Jijian Bureau, too, completed clandestine missions from time to time, the atmosphere was nothing like the harsh indifference of the Buyeo sect. At least she had a kind-hearted boss like Ming Yue and a dim-witted but easy-to-bully colleague like Pei Jingzi. More Pei Jingzi slander, so that will be 16 for injustice to Pei Jingzi. Hang on. The wig is cutting in a little bit. Oh, we lost an ear. I'm going to put the pen down so I don't write on my robe. Yep, that's digging right into my ear. There we go. Dude can't catch a break. No, you can't, Annika. Pei Jingzi has seriously bad luck with women and his work. Yeah. But they look so cool, so it's worth it. Okay. Okay. But her survival tonight didn't depend on her. Qin Miaoyu could only hope that Feng Xiao, who prided himself on being the best in the world, would demonstrate his true prowess tonight. At the very least, he ought to show some compassion for his pitiful subordinates who earned meager salaries and were always running to and fro. Thank you. She couldn't resist sneaking a look at the man beside her. Xu Buchu was also watching the fight. Qin Miaoyu had sealed his acupoints to stop the bleeding, but that didn't alleviate the pain. His shoulder blade remained shattered. Ouch! Qin Miaoyu understood that kind of pain. She'd once suffered a broken arm in a fight. The agony had been unbearable, only eased through groans and tears. But Xu Buchu didn't shed a tear or utter a single groan. He remained silent, keenly observing the unfolding battle as if he wasn't injured at all. I used them, or ones like them, for my half-elfin OC, but it was really hot, so they kept falling off. Yeah, I put spirit gum on there. Kind of worked for a while, but we'll see Saturday how they fare. As long as they stay on for the Danmei meetup, like they can take a break after the Danmei meetup. That's okay. She couldn't resist. No. What strength of will was required to ignore such bone-crushing pain? Qin Miaoyu couldn't imagine it. Thank you, Esper Lady. A loud bang echoed over the street as Qi collided. She whirled to see that Xiao Lu's sword glare had halted just 2 fingers' width from Feng Xiao. Feng Xiao's palm flipped smoothly from his abdomen into an open-handed strike aimed at Xiao Lu's face. At the same moment, his other hand unleashed a string. The string and sword chi collided with a thunderous roar, and the two sprang apart. They touched down on opposite eaves, landing lightly as drifting feathers, their footing as steady as a mountain. After a beat, a stream of bright crimson trickled from the corner of Feng Xiao's mouth. Xiao Le remained serene, sword in one hand and his other arm tucked behind his back. Qin Miaoyu was shocked. Oh no. Her boss was clearly the one at a disadvantage. So just out of curiosity, who's the worst boss in Danmei? Junwu. I don't think Feng Xiao's the worst, but he's definitely up there. I'll have to think about that, Truffle. Junwu, yeah. Oh my goodness. It's not Thousand Autumns, but it's... Oh gosh, what is it? Let me think on it, because he actively was manipulating people. Sun Jinxing. Yeah. Yeah. Yan Wushi's not a great boss either, but San Jinxing, I wasn't thinking about San Jinxing, but yeah. San Jinxing's definitely up there at worst boss. Yeah. Qin Miaoyu was shocked. Oh no. Her boss was clearly the one at a disadvantage. Jin Guangshen. Yeah. It definitely also comes to mind. Yeah. Yet strangely, Xiao Le didn't attempt a finishing blow. Sword Glare and Zither String clashed again, but this time it felt as though the two had reached some unspoken understanding. Neither struck with their full power, cautiously testing one another as they advanced and retreated, light and shadow weaving together in the rain. While this jousting of chi was thrilling in itself, it lacked the spectacle of a life and death struggle. Could it be that Xiao Le had been enchanted by her boss's handsome face and couldn't bear to end the life of this incredible beauty? That was impossible. From what she'd seen, Xiao Le might have some sympathy for Chu Chu, but he would show no mercy to Feng Xiao. Given Feng Xiao's pride, it was impossible for him to truly compromise and act the submissive wife as he was now doing. There had to be something she missed. Jin Miaoyu was baffled, but Feng Xiao knew exactly what had happened. He'd played a little trick, taking advantage of the rain and night fog as cover to intertwine three zither strings into one. With a swift flick, the string had split again and struck Xiao Le in the lower abdomen. Now that his opponent was also injured, things were a little fairer. Feng Xiao smirked. I think it's more likely that Xiao Le is just keeping him alive to bat at when he's bored. Possibly. I think they're both fighting pretty seriously here, though. Xiao Le flipped his wrist, unleashing a sword glare that undulated like the tide crashing in waves upon the shore. It came toward Feng Xiao like a mountain on the brink of collapse, boulders and pine trees tumbling from its peak. Like Mount Tai crumbling or the Yellow River breaching its banks, heaven and earth shook as the rocks collapsed and the waters surged up. This attack was nature manifest, great enough to astonish even the gods. Feng Xiao felt as though he was walking alone at the foot of a towering mountain caving in on itself, struggling against a relentless flood. Pressure closed in around him, stifling his movements and forcing him backward. He felt an overwhelming urge to kneel and plead for mercy, to beg the unforgiving heavens to spare his life. As he gazed toward his mind's eye, all he could see was desolation. Everything but the mountain had been reduced to ashes. Those who prided themselves on being blessed by heaven were but a drop in the ocean, insignificant amid such profound change. The heavens and earth, the wind and rain, all howled at him to kneel and submit, just as those already consumed by the torrent had lowered their heads to the ground before dissolving into ashes as their souls scattered away. I like to think that they are fighting over Chubachu here. It's pretty funny, though, yeah. But how could Feng Xiao submit? His lip curled in a sneer. As far back as Feng Xiao could remember, he had never knelt before heaven and earth, let alone cried or begged for mercy. People pleaded with him. He had never pleaded with others. He came as he pleased, left as he liked. The wealth and nobility of the human world, the ultimate summit of martial arts, the heavenly will as it was wrought upon the secular realm. He didn't give a damn about any of it. Also, phrasing. He came as he pleased, left as he liked. You know what you did. If Feng Xiao failed tonight, that invalid would be taken away without his approval. Since when could anyone else decide where Chubuchu could go and whether he would live or die? If my almighty self cannot, neither can Xiao Lue. At that moment, Feng Xiao felt as if he had broken free of some unseen shackle. He had been confined by the world's rules, but now he realized that both the laws of heaven and the laws of society stemmed from the fragmented chaos of the void. And if they were established from something fragmented, why couldn't he fragment what had already been established? I wonder if the translator is doing that on purpose. He did what as he pleased. His skills had greatly improved after absorbing the Chu Sarira, but they remained constrained within his current limits. Persistent fog hung thick before him, preventing him from making any progress. But now, in this moment of desperation, he grasped the path to survival. He cleared the mist and uncovered blue sky beyond, igniting his heart with fighting spirit. His mind was crystal clear. There were no enemies. There was no Shaolu. There was no towering waves of sword chi in front of him. There was only the mountain. When obstructed by a mountain, blast through the stone. When obstructed by a river, split the waters. Feng Xiao raised his hand. 3 strings shot forward, launching like glittering arrows toward the breach in the raging mountain torrent. As far as Xiao Luo was concerned, his sword glare was near flawless. It had transcended all boundaries, and almost no one in the world could overcome it. The only possible weakness lay in the sword glare's angle when it clashed with the opponent's true chi. Still, in a life and death battle between experts, it was impossible to predict every outcome. Minor flaws were insignificant. He didn't want to waste any more time battling Feng Xiao. Though his opponent's skills were formidable, they still fell short of his own. That difference would decide the battle's outcome. That's pretty cool, Truffle. The sword glare burst forth like a rainbow, illuminating the dark skies. The 3 strings swept forward, each taking a slightly different trajectory. With absolute precision, one slid into the gap created by the slight deviation of the sword glare as it collided with Feng Xiao's chi. Xiao Luo's eyes widened. He hadn't expected that, in such dire straits, Feng Xiao could still launch a counterattack. He grew even more determined to kill him here tonight. In the blink of an eye, his opponent closed the distance, deflecting the sword glare with his strings as he flew forward. Concentrating all his chi into his palm, Feng Xiao struck, leaving Xiao Lue no way to evade. Qin Miaoyu's wide-open eyes saw 2 shadowy figures, thin as wispy smoke, separate. Quiet coughs and muffled groans echoed through the debris, leaving her unable to discern which man the sound came from. While she hesitated, Ming Yue leapt into action, as if he had been preparing for this moment all along. He jumped up from the ground, charged toward Xiao Lue, and struck out with his palm. Xiao Lue and Ming Yue's palms slammed into each other. The third chief crumpled to the ground like a broken paper kite, but Xiao Lue, too, staggered back several steps. He wasn't smiling anymore. Only cold, murderous intent remained. As he glanced over, a chill ran through Qin Miaoyu's heart, and her body went stiff. But Xiao Luo's eyes didn't settle on her. His gaze swept past, alighting on Chubuchu for the briefest moment. Xiao Luo's cold voice reached their ears, but the man himself had drifted away. Looks like I must ask Chu Xiang for pointers some other time. I won't forget the humiliation of Lingbo Villa's destruction. Qin Miaoyu was momentarily stunned. Just stupidly, he left? Just like that? Ming Yue pushed himself up into all fours, into all fours and coughed up several mouthfuls of blood mingled with shredded flesh. Oh, that's unfortunate and disturbing. He'd clearly sustained severe internal injuries from Xiao Lu's last palm strike. He was seriously injured, Chubuchu said softly. He still had some strength left, but so did Feng Xiao. Xiao Lu couldn't guarantee his victory, so he left. Yeah, ew, that's not good, right? Feng Xiao was incredulous. I was the one who stymied him just now. Why did he only say farewell to you? Chubuchu's face was drawn, yet his eyes remained bright and keen. A hint of a smile flickered within them, softening that sharp edge and lending a gentleness to the raindrops that fell around him. Maybe because the only opponent he cares about is me? Feng Xiao snorted coldly. If you both admire each other so much, why not just go with him? He advanced slowly toward Chubuchu, still cloaked in bloodlust and murderous intent, like an evil Asura or the lord of the underworld. Qin Miaoyu lifted her gaze and saw Feng Xiao's cold eyes. Just as when Xiao Lu had glanced at her earlier, she felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. Is now the time to bicker, right? Her reason screamed for her to run away, yet her body remained frozen. Yet Chubuchu had the presence of mind to sigh with regret. He left too quickly. There wasn't time. Feng Xiao strode up and dropped one knee before him, though only to make it easier to look down on him. You could have easily stayed in your secure governor's residence and let us mutilate each other. What on earth possessed you to come all the way here? Just passing by. I saw you say, worth it. You must be blind. Feng Xiao narrowed his eyes. You said you would entrust your back to me. Chubuchu's face was devoid of emotion. What I meant was that I would take over the Jijian Bureau after your death. There's no need to thank me. Helping others is the foundation of happiness. We've known each other for some time. Barely a minute had passed, and he was denying everything. Feng Xiao laughed in anger. Rather than waste time arguing, took hold of Chubuchu's chin and lowered his head, swallowing those unfinished words. I knew it! Here we go for 96. We're gonna reach that 100. These guys are so cat-coded. I like you, but I'd rather die than admit it. Very much so, Truffle. Alright. Oh my, we're almost done. Wait a minute. Okay, those are short chapters. We have about 30 pages left. Alright. 146. 15. Chapter 150. The rain was light, but the fine drizzle mingled with the dust on the wind and produced an uncomfortable stickiness. Chubuchu's hair and clothes were damp, yet the gusting night wind only blew them halfway dry before he was soaked again. He'd rather have been thoroughly drenched by a torrential downpour. It'd be better than the clammy feeling of damp hair and layers of clothing clinging together, heavy as iron, threatening to crush his spine and neck. The ground was an amalgamation of crushed stone and mud that made it uncomfortable to lie down. Though the pain in his shoulder had dulled from excruciating agony to a persistent ache, Chubuchu still couldn't use one of his arms and had to rely solely on one elbow to try to lift himself. Every breath was greeted not by the fresh scent of rain mingled with damp earth or the sweet aroma of spilled wine from the tavern, but by the metallic tang of blood. Lovely. His burdened and broken body was weighed down by injuries yet to heal and freshly acquired wounds. He felt more than just pain coursing through his limbs. His old injuries had been aggravated and were screaming shrilly as if invisible hands were dismantling him with dull knives. So, fun thing about arm or broken injuries, broken bones, yes, there's dull, lingering pain, but a lot of times, at least initially after you first break it, if you don't touch it or move it, because of the adrenaline, you can manage a lot. I broke my arm when I was in second grade, and I broke it in like enough where I needed pins. And like, it hurt. But like, also, when I was in the emergency room, like waiting for them to see them, I was also coloring like with my other hand. Like, I was chilling and I was good until they touched my arm. Then it was very much not okay. So like, him using his elbow to like lever himself up with, I hope it was the other arm, because like he may be a badass, but like that is far past ridiculousness. Yeah. Ah! But all his agonies paled in comparison to the sensation on his lips. Chubuchu opened his eyes slightly and momentarily forgot to resist. Ooh, scandalous! Why would Feng Xiao do such a thing at a time like this? They were seriously injured, and they weren't alone. Guang Shanhai was still out cold, but two pairs of eyes bored into them. Feng Xiao's two copies wore vacant expressions completely uncharacteristic of the man they were impersonating, frozen in place like twin pieces of wood. When Chubuchu caught sight of them from the corner of his eye, his injured bones ached even more. But Feng Xiao paid them no heed, acting as if no one else was there. He pressed his lips harder against Chubuchu's, displeased with his distraction. He wasn't content to stop after a taste. He insisted on banging down the door and sampling everything within the master's house before he would be satisfied. 97. Chubuchu's uninjured hand found Feng Xiao's shoulder and shoved. He was clearly not playing coy, but unfortunately, the seriously injured Feng Xiao remained as motionless as a firmly planted boulder. He tightened his grip on Chubuchu's chin, drawing a faint moan of discomfort from the man beneath him. Phrasing. Maybe, thought Chubuchu, he should pretend to be unconscious. It was his usual tactic, after all. Feng Xiao appeared to have seen through his plan. He threatened in a voice so low only Chubuchu could hear it. If you pretend to pass out, I swear I'll strip you naked in front of them. 98. Chubuchu said nothing. He had no doubt Feng Er was capable of doing as he said, but even so, he refused to lose. As he hesitated, Feng Xiao brazenly claimed his mouth, only leisurely drawing back when Chubuchu's breathing became disorderly, and his cheeks flushed. Even then, the efforts of Feng Xiao's scorching breath lingered. Effects. His usually cold and ashy lips were now vibrant red and swollen from their kiss. The Shuyue chief had been forced to tilt his head to meet Feng Xiao's assault. The corners of his eyes had reddened, though whether from the rain or their heated breaths was impossible to say. He was seemingly angry, yet not truly so. Feng Xiao was close enough to see his expression clearly, and his heart swelled with pride, knowing the other might not notice such details, but he did. Even the frustration of fighting Xiao Lue to a draw and watching him leave so calmly had faded significantly. Ming Yue's jaw dropped, and he didn't even notice the rain falling. He wondered if his injuries were more severe than he had realized, resulting in qi deviation-induced hallucinations. Hastily, Ming Yue averted his gaze from the two entwined figures. Fighting through the pain, he struggled to turn his head to look at Qin Miaoyu, intending to call her over to help him. But Qin Miaoyu was even more stupefied than he was. She stared wide-eyed, unable to tear her gaze away. Suspicious, Ming Yue looked back to find Feng Xiao and Chubuchu had already broken apart. Feng Er coughed a few times, then turned his head and spat out a mouthful of black blood before grabbing Chubuchu's arm to help him up from the ground. They looked completely normal. So it really had been a hallucination. Ming Yue breathed a sigh of relief. Jin Miaoyu leaned over and whispered, "So the deputy chief and Chief Chu are in that kind of relationship?" "What kind of relationship?" Ming Yue asked in confusion. When he recalled what he had just seen, all the hair on his body stood on end. His internal injuries throbbed anew. "They're, you know, cut sleeves." Jin Miaoyu's voice was very low. She was the least severely injured of them all. After the tavern, she hadn't participated in any of the subsequent battles. Now that she'd rested and recovered somewhat, she was the only one with the energy to follow up on these details. Before Qin Miaoyu could answer, or Ming Yue could answer, Feng Xiao glanced over. His murderous aura still clung to him, and he had yet to return to his playful, licentious self. Qin Miaoyu immediately fell silent. Not until he turned back around did she exhale and ask Ming Yue in a low voice, "Third Chief, will we still be fighting the Shu Yue Bureau for credit after this?" "Hi, Momar's Rover. Um, you just missed the moment where we are two shamelessness counters from 100. They just finished fighting Xiao Le. Feng Xiao kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough, and then Chu Chu kind of half admitted that well, he silently mouths that he would allow Feng Xiao to guard his back, to watch his back, which is basically a confession on his part. And then Feng Xiao murderously walked over to Chu Chu and ravished him, like he kissed him in front of two of his internal injuries flared. He yearned to vomit up another mouthful of gore. Feng Er had always been brazen and dismissive of etiquette, but Ming Yue never thought he would be this audacious. It was either a breakthrough or the beginning of Feng Xiao's criminal career. Yeah. You could have chosen anyone on Earth, yet you had to fall for the chief of the Shuoyue Bureau. Ming Yue had heard Chubuchu was a prickly character, but this wasn't the source of his headache. It was the Shuoyue Bureau behind him and the prospect of what the Empress would think once she found out. Although the Emperor and Empress were themselves deeply in love, no emperor would be pleased to see his subordinates pairing off. It defeated the purpose of all the checks and balances he'd put in place. Fair point. This matter must remain a strict secret. Ming Yue, diligent and loyal as he was, had already began contemplating their next step, his injury hurting more with every minute. It was no ordinary internal injury. His last clash with Xiao Le had exhausted all remnants of Ming Yue's qi, resulting in severe damage to his meridians and organs. Had Xiao Le not been weakened from his battle with Feng Xiao, Ming Yue would surely have lost his life. Third Chief? Jin Miaoyu had no idea what Ming Yue was thinking, only that he was staring vacantly ahead as if possessed by an evil spirit. "No, I'm too tired. I need a nap before I deal with this," Ming Yue murmured. He closed his eyes and lay right back down in the muddy puddle, refusing to move. Too tired for this bullshit. Jin Miaoyu was bewildered. Should she help her superior up or go back alone? She was tired too. If she helped Ming Yue walk the whole way back, but then again, if she returned without him, she would definitely face a reprimand. "Oh, hi Rika. Welcome." Poor guys worried their romance will destabilize the empire. So basically, Xiao Le showed up. We found the secrets of Yang Yun. We know where the grain is. Chu Chu sent people off to deal with it, and Feng Xiao and Xiao Le fought and kind of came to a tie. They both injured each other, and Then Feng Xiao angrily walked over to Chubu Chu, who kind of came to an understanding and kind of admitted he had feelings for Chubu Chu, or like at least trusted him, which is a huge thing from Chubu Chu. And Feng Xiao kissed him in front of two of his subordinates. So that is where we are now. The subordinates are heavily injured, and they're like, "Did that just happen? Like, what now?" So that's where we are. How you doing? She looked around and found a dry spot under the eaves to lie down, feeling perfectly at ease as she closed her eyes. She was also injured. She let herself lapse into unconsciousness. They thought they were hallucinating. Yes, they did. Chubuchu had gotten to his feet. Feng Xiao was supporting one of his arms, but in truth, he was the one bearing most of Feng Xiao's weight. If he didn't, Feng Xiao probably wouldn't make it back. Wasn't Deputy Chief Feng awfully majestic a moment ago? Chubuchu sneered, unsympathetic. Why are you on death's door now? Feng Xiao sighed. They say dying under peonies will make you an elegant ghost. But if I really die here, won't I waste all that fine sentiment about me being worth it? If you die, I'll hang bright red lanterns at the Shuoyue Bureau for 2 weeks, Chubuchu replied. I'll set off firecrackers 3 times a day and throw the most lavish celebration I can afford. Choo-choo, it's charming when a woman speaks insincerely, but when a man does, it's pretentious. You know I would never compare you to the mediocre masses, but is it really so difficult for you to admit, even once, that you don't want me to die? Since you can run your mouth, you should be fine to walk. For I'm sure he loved that. His internal organs burned like they were on fire. The moment his focus turned to his injuries, sorry, hang on 1 second. His internal organs burned like they were on fire. The moment his focus turned to his injuries, he couldn't utter so much as a word. Deputy Chief Feng, ever fastidious, a man who would change his clothes for even a tiny speck of dirt, had never been so wretched in his life. As he slowly exhaled, he vaguely heard Chubuchu's footsteps fading into the distance. It seemed he really was angry. But this weather was freezing. Why hadn't Feng Xiao put on an extra layer before coming out? Just because he'd felt fine at the time? If he had, his teeth wouldn't be chattering now as the autumn winds and cold rain battered him. Still, when he considered Xiaolu likely wasn't faring any better, his heart was at peace. Even the disappointment of Chubu Chu abandoning him wasn't as pronounced. The footsteps sounded again. 1 step heavy, 1 step light, as if the person was injured on one side, making their movements unbalanced. Feng Xiao's thoughts stuttered to a halt, and he forced his eyes open. Before he could get a clear look, a cloak stinking of blood fell over him. It was very thick, but half soaked. Feng Xiao frowned as a bamboo cane was stuffed into his right hand. Where in heaven's name had Chubuchu found it? There's the bamboo cane again! This author really does love giving their characters bamboo canes. Whose cloak is this? His voice was weak, but it didn't hide his distaste. The young leader of the Jinhuan guilds, Chubuchu said coldly. You better support yourself a little. My shoulder's broken. I don't want a dead man's cloak. Feng Xiao's voice was still scornful, but now it held a hint of playful petulance. Chubuchu coughed a few times. As Feng Xiao struggled to sit up, Chubuchu grabbed one of his arms and helped him. Pain shot through his own broken bones, but though he stiffened momentarily, he didn't make a sound. Yet Feng Xiao seemed to notice. He drew a breath and steadied himself with the bamboo cane, relieving some of the weight on Chubuchu. Even then, his voice dripped disdain. Exchange cloaks with me. I'll wear yours. Chubuchu sneered. Not a chance. The two of them struggled on, supporting each other as they awkwardly made their way back. Their pace was slow, for they had to spare some of their strength to bicker. Neither was willing to concede. All right, so that's pretty shameless that even at this time they're bickering as they're so severely injured. Bickering is like they're flirting at this point. Like, so I'm giving them a shamelessness counter. The two of them struggled on, supporting each other as they awkwardly made their way back. Their pace was slow, for they had to spare some of their strength to bicker. Neither was willing to concede. Chubuchu, with your sharp tongue and plain looks, if you keep this up, you're sure to die alone. Your lordship needn't feel overly concerned. How about I show some mercy and offer myself up as a living sacrifice? At least then you won't bring calamity upon others. Is Langdu's cloak warm? It's passable. Why? Are you thinking about trading with me now that you're cold? Forget it. I heard he has a strange habit. Before every battle, he must sleep with a beautiful woman. Perhaps the cloak he's wearing now is laid under the lady. Who knows what evidence of their passion remains? There seems to be a reek coming from it. Keep talking. I'll vomit blood on you and we can die together. At last, silence. The rain stopped and the autumn wind rolled in. Though heavy clouds covered the sky and the moon was absent, a faint, refreshing breeze swirled past. The clear skies that had been gone for so long would finally return. Later, Chubuchu sent the Shuyue guard and Pei Jingzi to fetch the others. A carriage comfortably transported Qin Miaoyu, Ming Yue, and Guang Shanhai back to the relay station. Before Qin Miaoyu could celebrate her wise decision, however, a wave of heavy official duties poured in. She soon wished she could cry and fall into a coma from her wounds like Ming Yue had. Shaolu's people had transported all the rice away, and not a single grain remained. Fortunately, the flood had receded, and with the aid of Yang Yun's testimony, the several large households that had conspired with him were easily captured. Following Yang Yun's list, Chupachu rounded them up and pressured them to hand over their stored grain for Pei Jingzi to distribute to the citizens. The large households immediately became evasive, unwilling to cough up what they had swallowed. The Li family even boasted of their relationship with the Li clan of Longxi. It was common knowledge that the matriarch of Longxi's Li clan was Empress Dugu's older sister. Jin Miaoyu had only joined the Jijian Bureau recently and found it difficult to navigate the intricate relationships between Central Plains families. She sought out Chubuchu for advice. When Qin Miaoyu arrived, Chubuchu had been knocked unconscious by a bowl of hemp powder while the doctor set his bones. His thin lips were pressed tightly together and his brow was furrowed, as if the pain reached him even in his sleep. Qiao Xian stood guard beside him. Qin Miaoyu cast her a quick glance. She'd heard Qiao Xian had knelt at Chubuchu's door for most of the night after returning, and that Pei Jingzi, that fool, had held an umbrella for her the entire time. Only when the sky began to pale with dawn did Chubuchu summon her inside. Qin Miaoyu didn't know what they had discussed, but Qiao Xian's relief afterward was palpable. Her face shone, radiant, as if she had unshouldered years' worth of burdens. Pei Jingzi, fool that he was, couldn't take his eyes off her. Well. Qin Miaoyu silently sighed at the incompetence of her Jijian Bureau colleagues. Noticing her gaze, Qiao Xian looked up, her eyes flashing with coldness and hostility. Qin Miaoyu was taken aback until she remembered she'd been busy all night while Feng Xiao and Ming Yue were both injured and recuperating. She hadn't removed her makeup, so she was still wearing Feng Xiao's face. That's funny. That's really funny. In that case, she thought wickedly, couldn't she use Deputy Chief Fang's identity to play a trick or two and let him take the blame once he woke? Perhaps she was tired of living. Chubuchu opened his eyes in a daze. The pain made him slow to react. He stared at the curtain above his head in silence for a full quarter hour before slowly turning toward Xiao Xian and Qin Miaoyu. Lord Chief, Xiao Xian said softly, the doctor visited earlier and left a prescription. The medicine has been prepared. Would you like a bowl? What did she mean, would you like a bowl? She was talking about taking medicine like drinking soup. Qin Miaoyu considered for a moment. Then she playfully imitated Feng Xiao's voice. Tone. I have candy here. As if by magic, she produced a tiny jar, opening the lid to release the sweet smell of malt sugar. Chubuchu took the jar and looked at her. Qin Miaoyu, do you have nothing better to do? Qin Miaoyu choked. She thought her performance was flawless, yet this man had seen right through her. The Lord Chief is wise. The clever Qin Miaoyu laughed awkwardly, no longer pretending. Before Fen Xiao had gone into seclusion to recover, he'd instructed her to follow Chubuchu's commands. Chubuchu had shown no mercy, ordering her around, driving her like a dog and sending her all over the country. I've gathered up the refugees as you'd asked. It's just as your lordship predicted. They refused to camp outside the city. They've been in prison for many days, said Chubuchu coolly. Of course they no longer trust the government. To them, leaving the city is no different than waiting for death. Only remaining offers a glimmer of hope. His voice was hoarse and slow, but very steady. Qin Miaoyu patiently waited for him to finish, then nodded. It's just as you say. I let them take temporary shelter in the county office. It's vacant after Huang Lue's death, and I set some constables there to keep watch. For now, things are under control. The trouble is, there's no grain left. The wealthy households aren't willing to provide any. They claim it's the government's responsibility to aid the refugees and that it goes against all reason to tell them to give their own food away. The Ding and Li families are most adamant, and they have relatives at court. The subordinate isn't sure what we ought to do. I must trouble your lordship for advice. We're down to 2 chapters. That's exciting. And yes, I'm also glad that they have their priorities straight. You gotta know where their energy should go. $2.12. 151. When Xiaoxian brought in the medicine, Chubuchu regarded the bowl with disgust, his expression more hateful than when he had looked upon Xiaolu. He had no good opinion of those landlords. They were the type who wouldn't weep until they saw the coffins. If they refused to cooperate, kill them. Qin Miaoyu was stunned. All of them? She could tell he wasn't joking. Qin Miaoyu was no bleeding heart, but these wealthy families were part of a complicated web of relationships within Guangqian County. Since the mastermind Yang Yun was a relative of the emperor, it was possible his collaborators might also have connections at court. It was easy to say, kill them, but if someone went after the Jijian Bureau for it later, then she, a simple spy, couldn't bear the responsibility. Feng Xiao was in seclusion and Ming Yue was in a coma. Everyone with decision-making power was absent. Someone of her low rank had no authority to dictate the Jijian Bureau's actions. Chubuchu fell silent. He too realized it was inappropriate to leave this to Qin Miaoyu. After all, she wasn't the head of the Jijian Bureau. Currently, only Chubuchu had the rank and status to act. After a disaster like this, plague is bound to follow. Gather all the doctors and recruit the largest pharmacy in the city. Have them prescribe some preventative medication for the refugees and order mugwort burned around the city to dispel disease. Yang Yun left us plenty of gold and silver. Deduct the expenses from that first. Keep a record. Rong Qing has already reported this matter to the court. When he returns to the capital, he can present the record along with his list of Yang Yun's crimes. He thought for a moment. After that, go to the villa and find a few corpses. Fresh ones. The more gruesome their deaths, the better. It's fine if their faces are damaged. Just choose ones that will scare people with a single glance and give them nightmares if they look again. Qin Miaoyu looked at him strangely. She'd likely never heard of such a bizarre request, but she quickly recovered. Quite a few of our enemies died at Feng Yun Tavern. We can bring them here. That will save us from having to search. Chubuchu nodded. That's fine. Lord Chief, Xiao Xian reminded him, it's time for your medicine. The two engaged in a silent standoff, which ended when Chubuchu picked up the bowl. Qin Miaoyu quickly left to carry out Chubuchu's orders, leaving Xiao Xian and Chubuchu alone. After hesitating for a long moment, Xiao Xian silently knelt. Chubuchu seemed unsurprised. Have you thought it over? Xiao Xian lowered her head. Yes. As long as I can stay in the Shu Yui Bureau, the subordinate will remain at your lordship's beck and call. I'm yours to command, always. They'd had a long talk earlier that day in which Chubuchu had offered her two choices. One was to leave the Shu Yui Bureau forever. The other was to stay, but not with him. The Shu Yui Bureau had hidden sentry posts all across the land. Xiao Xian would be stationed at one of those and start over. Only after proving herself would she have a chance to be promoted. The latter path was naturally much more difficult. Xiao Xian had been with Chubuchu since the establishment of the Shu Yui Bureau and was currently a 7th rank official. This demotion effectively returned her to the bottom to start again from scratch. I thought you'd choose to leave behind your official position and be free, Chubuchu commented. It wouldn't be such a bad thing. I want to stay, Xiao Xian insisted. Whatever it takes. The Qing Kong sect from which Xiao Xian hailed was small, with mediocre teachings and no secrets worth stealing. Their only skill of note was the art of disguise, but even this wasn't particularly impressive. In the face of raw martial power, disguises counted for little. Consequently, the sect had few disciples. Hoping to revitalize it, the new sect leader had married the only daughter of the leader of a large sect from the southeast. She was an arrogant woman, pampered since childhood, and after marrying in, she wasted no time ordering everyone about and meddling wherever she could. Xiao Xian's beauty inevitably drew her ire and ultimately resulted in her expulsion from the sect. Exiled and with nowhere to go, Xiao Xian received instructions from the 13 floors of Yunhai that sent her to Chang'an, the capital of the former Shao dynasty. Per her orders, Xiao Xian waited at a tea house on the outskirts of Chang'an for half a month, exhausting all her remaining money and facing numerous mishaps due to her lovely face. She was left utterly miserable. She had gradually broken away from her small sex mindset and realized there was a larger world out there. Perhaps the 13 floors of Yunhai had hung her out to dry, so she could experience the warmth and coldness of a world that she might be convinced to submit to them fully. But she'd never encountered any messenger from the 13 floors. Instead, she met Chubuchu. Chubuchu hadn't yet been put in charge of the Shuuyui Bureau then, though Lady Dugu already trusted him deeply, and he was a guest in the Duke of Su's residence. Few people knew of him. Xiaoxian had never heard his name. Later, when Chubuchu learned of her origins and asked her if she wished to come along with him, she'd vaguely realized that her value to the 13 floors might lie herein. She came from a small sect and had no skills except the art of disguise. Chubuchu found people to teach her mediocre science and some ancient texts on disguises for her to learn from. After the Shuuyui Bureau was founded, he took her with him as they traveled the world handling cases. Not only did Chao Xian benefit from receiving Chubuchu's direct teachings, she felt needed by the Shuuyui Bureau and by Chubuchu himself. She thought that she had found her place and was far more at home than she'd ever been in her original sect. Only in the Shuuyui Bureau did she feel her heart was beating and alive, that there would always be goals for her to accomplish and someone she could look to for guidance. Later, she was threatened by a messenger from the 13 floors. Qiao Xian was forced to choose between two options: exposing her identity and being cast out of the Shuuyui Bureau, or delivering irrelevant messages that wouldn't endanger Chubuchu. One misstep led to another, and by the time she tried to turn back, she found her path had already changed beyond recognition. She went to Xiao's tea house determined to die, but unexpectedly, Chubuchu had left her a path to life. Your body needs long-term care. Refining the ice fungus pill requires time and labor, and there are few left. I'll refine a bottle for your lordship before I leave and write down the prescription. The old doctor at Huaizi Hall knows the method. You can ask him to refine it for you. Neither her words nor her reluctant actions softened Chubuchu's resolve to send her from his side. Everyone must pay a price for their actions. Regardless of the hardships they might have suffered, they should be prepared to bear the consequences for their decisions. Since Qiao Xian had chosen to stay, she had accepted her punishment. In any event, leaving the capital for a secret post might not be the misfortune she thought. Chubuchu grunted. As the medicine gradually took effect, his head began to swim. He'd wanted to wait for news from Qin Miaoyu before laying down, but his body was warning him he had reached his limits. All the willpower in the world couldn't counteract his fatigue. Xiao Xian's words grew foggy and confused, as if he had heard them through a paper window screen. Even his sleep was restless. Countless dreams came one after another, whirling through his mind like a revolving lantern. The dead, former enemies, many of whom Chubuchu had killed or plotted against, crawled up from the underworld, loathing and resentment wrapped like spider silk around Chubuchu's body. They screamed for revenge, demanding his life, but Chubuchu had a will of iron and a heart of stone. Even in his dream, he remained impassive as he allowed the evil spirits to spiral around him and howl. He felt as if a massive boulder was tied to his body, dragging him down to the bottom of a deep pool. Cries echoed in his ears as if trying to call him back, but the nameless force below was too strong. He flattened his hand into a blade and sliced through the silk, strand by strand, but his consciousness was adrift in the sea of his dreamscape, unable to find solid ground. He had no idea how much time had passed when the voices in its ears gradually sharpened and became clear. Qiao Xian was talking, answered by another familiar voice. Chubuchu's reflexes were sluggish in the dream. Chubuchu frowned and pondered for a long time before realizing the other voice must belong to Pei Jingzi. The two of them spoke fast and low. It didn't sound like an idle chat. Their voices were tight with unconcealed anxiety. He seemed to hear the words, "My lord," and "Deputy Chief Fang." Suddenly, he heard a short, shrill scream. "Ah!" Chubuchu opened his eyes. His heart ached dully at being forced awake, as if tugged by an invisible thread. He felt pain shoot up his injured shoulder. The scream hadn't come from Pei Jingzi or Qiao Xian, but from the neighboring courtyard. It was the terrified scream of a young woman. Pei Jingzi rushed over to take a look. Xiao Xian was about to follow when she glanced back and saw Chubu Chu with his eyes open. She stopped in her tracks and hurried back to help him sit up. What happened? Chubu Chu had woken too abruptly and his mind was still slow. Deputy Chief Feng is in seclusion to heal his wounds. Something seems to have gone wrong, Xiao Xian said. Pei Jingzi had arranged for maidservants to deliver food and water daily to Feng Xiao's quarters, ensuring that he would have what he needed upon waking. But while Chubuchu had been sleeping during the day, a maid had encountered Feng Xiao, who was supposed to be in seclusion behind closed doors. He'd struck and injured her, and it had taken the combined efforts of Pei Jingzi, Qin Miaoyu, and the freshly awakened Ming Yue to subdue him. The incident had triggered a qi deviation in Feng Xiao, and he'd fallen into a coma. Chubuchu's vacant gaze gradually gained focus. Just now, I thought I heard you talking about the ice fungus pill. What did the pill have to do with this? Xiao Xian instinctively shook her head. Nothing. Your lordship misheard. Chubuchu stared at her in silence, and Xiao Xian stared back. Pei Jingzi knew that there was an enormous gap between his own martial skills and Feng Xiao's, but he had never before felt it so clearly. A hand was squeezing his neck, its grip growing tighter and tighter. Breathing became impossible. At this rate, he'd be meeting the ruler of the underworld any minute. My lord, Pei Jingzi forced between gritted teeth. Feng Xiao seemed not to hear. His hair was disheveled, and a red mark ran vertically between his brows, a sign that his qi was blocked at the yin-tang point, and his mind was greatly affected. After absorbing the 2 Saurira, his internal strength had increased by leaps and bounds, but his progress had come with a latent danger. Taking shortcuts would always lead to disaster. Feng Xiao hadn't entered qi deviation when fighting Xiao Le, but that was only due to his extraordinary willpower. Sooner or later, this moment was bound to come. In desperation, Pei Jingzi raised his palm and struck at Feng Xiao. The blow was instantly deflected. Pei Jingzi spasmed as his own internal energy rebounded back on him. Deputy Chief Feng's martial skills were no weaker when in qi deviation. On the contrary, his temporary loss of lucidity meant no one could restrain him. Pei Jingzi could have cried. He deeply regretted not being harsher on Feng Xiao when he'd subdued him the first time with Ming Yue and the others. Who could have imagined his lord would break free of his confinement so quickly? Now he might not last long enough for the third chief to arrive. By the time he did, Pei Jingzi would be dead and buried. Wouldn't his lord be sad to realize he'd killed Pei Jingzi with his own 2 hands? It's me, Jingzi! Pei Jingzi choked out, trying to buy himself time and a chance of survival. He needed Feng Xiao to wake up. The words had no effect. Feng Xiao wasn't in a mindless rage where he was killing people with every strike, but his consciousness was turned inward, lost and chaotic. He was completely oblivious to the outside world. Pei Jingzi's eyes welled with tears. At the edge of his vision, he caught movement. Ming Yue, Chubuchu, and the others had arrived. It was as if a savior from heaven had descended. His eyes lit up. Erlong! Feng Er! They were familiar voices. At that moment, Feng Xiao was like an untethered soul. The voices floated in from a distance and entered his ears, but his soul was caught in a tug-of-war with the Saurira of the Grand Master it had formed from. His qi was roiling, seeking an exit it couldn't find. He could spare them no attention. All he could do was allow his body to follow its instincts and fight. The voices grew slower and closer. Only then did they start to register. Ming Yue and that Chu fellow. Feng Xiao sighed and looked at the faint apparition in front of him. Not far away, a tall man with a beard and mustache stood opposite him, his hands behind his back. His face oozed arrogance, as if nothing in the world was worthy of his attention. The owner of the two Sarira, Chu Yu Wang, former Grand Master of the demonic sects. I knew it, Feng Xiao thought. How could Xiao Lue be so generous as to give the Sarira away for nothing? He was waiting for this. Such treasures were not meant to be possessed by ordinary people. If Feng Xiao hadn't come from a demonic sect and trained in their martial arts, he'd be facing more than just chi deviation right now. His body might have exploded, killing him instantly. Pei Jingzi had no idea what dramatic transformations Feng Xiao was experiencing within. He only knew that the hand gripping his throat relaxed minutely at the sound of Chubuchu's voice. Ming Yue seized the opportunity to step forward and seal Feng Xiao's acupoints. With the help of Qin Miaoyu, he supported Feng Xiao's feverish body as he collapsed again. Pei Jingzi had faithfully served at Feng Xiao's side for so long, yet he couldn't compare to the man who'd known him less than a year. That thought made him deeply unhappy. Before he could dwell on it, he heard Ming Yue say gravely, "We can't let this go on. We must find a supply of ice fungus. It's the only thing that can help Erlang through his crisis." The deputy chief is suffering from chi deviation, Qin Miaoyu said, puzzled. What good is medicine? Shouldn't we work together to channel his chi? He might have what? Boom. Ming Yue smiled bitterly. Absolutely not. He doesn't lack chi right now. His chi is about to explode. He can't rely on anyone but himself to regulate his meridians. The ice fungus can't change his situation, but it can help. Qin Miaoyu sighed, her brow creasing. That might be more difficult than you think. I checked at every pharmacy in the city earlier. Either they haven't heard of it or their knowledge is half complete. And they just say it's hard to find. Only the major pharmacies in the capital stock it. We'll never get to it in time. You don't have to go to the capital, said Chubuchu. I have some right here. Qiao Xian's eyes widened in alarm. Before she could object, Chubuchu pulled out a porcelain bottle. He poured out the last 3 pills, pried open Feng Xiao's mouth, and stuffed them inside, then closed his jaw and forced him to swallow. Okay. 152. 231. 45. Chapter 152. Meng Xiao paid no mind to the outside world. He was locked in a vicious battle, one no less dangerous than the fight in the tavern. Chu Yu Wang's 2 Sarira seemed to harbor all the pridefulness of their former master, refusing to be absorbed or assimilated. After lying dormant for several weeks and feigning submission, they'd finally taken the opportunity to launch a counterattack while Feng Xiao was heavily injured. It was exactly what one would expect from a member of the demonic sects. Fortunately, Feng Xiao had been wise enough to guess Xiao Lue wouldn't give such precious Sarira away without a catch. He'd kept a portion of his guard up all this time. Otherwise, he'd have already been embroiled with the invader and ultimately destroyed himself. For the mighty deputy chief of the Jijian Bureau, leader of the Fajing sect, to die from a chi deviation. It was only slightly better than choking to death on his dinner. He'd become a famous laughingstock in Jianghu history. What's more, Feng Xiao was elegant, peerless, radiant, dazzling, show-stealing, unique. If he died like this, wouldn't the world suffer a terrible loss, deprived of such a priceless treasure? And we have reached 100! I love that it was Feng Xiao bragging about how amazing he is that reached 100 shamefulness or shamelessness counter. It's very on brand with Feng Xiao. And yes, the idea of people just exploding is wild, Truffle. I agree. Humph! An expression of pure contempt, neither pleased nor angry. It resembled the mighty drums of the thunder beast's hide made by the Yellow Emperor himself, resounding for thousands of miles. 100! No, I'm too pretty to die. Very much so. When this sound reached Feng Xiao's ears, he felt his foggy mind quake. His already chaotic qi disrupted further. Feng Xiao looked to the wavering shadow at the wavering shadow in front of him. It wasn't the former Grandmaster Master Chu Yu Wang in truth. It was only his echo, which Feng Xiao's mind had conjured up thanks to the Sarira. Yet in another sense, it was the last trace of Chu Yu Wang left in the realm of the living. Like a fish that had been killed, then served at the table, Feng Xiao thought mercilessly. Steamed, braised, in vinegar, or fried, one couldn't say it was gone, but it had turned from a living creature into someone else's meal. I knew we could do it. We definitely did. The mnemonic sects believed in the survival of the fittest. They seldom honored their predecessors. The only thing they worshipped was strength. But Feng Xiao was not a native disciple of the demonic sects. Even his position as leader of the Fajing sect was one he'd reluctantly accepted and haphazardly managed. He was much more enthusiastic about his role in the Jijian Bureau. Into this path with his talent, he'd have had far more achievements than he already did. As a consequence, this leader of the Fajing sect respected the demonic sect's preceding Grand Masters even less than usual. Standing on the brink of life and death, he still spared a moment to ridicule them. Met with this frivolous attitude, Chu Yu Wang didn't say a word. He sneered and struck. He sprung forward with overwhelming force, catching Feng Xiao off guard. Killing intent choked the air, winding around Feng Xiao strand by strand like the silk of a cocoon, tight and impenetrable. Chu Yu Wang captured every stream of qi Feng Xiao unleashed before it could have any effect. He had a counter to every attack. He started slow, then turned ferocious. Feng Xiao's mind, his last line of defense, was swept away by the intensity of the attack. His consciousness flickered, his body no longer under his control. You dare to call yourself a successor to the demonic sects with only this level of ability? A rough voice echoed in Feng Xiao's ear, startling him. He instinctively moved to counterattack, but found himself unable to harness his qi, as if an unseen force was pinning him down. Only now did he realize he'd underestimated his predecessor. Anyone capable of leaving such a glorious mark on the demonic sect's legacy couldn't be any less talented than himself. The consequences of his carelessness might very well be his life. Feng Xiao finally didn't dare fool around anymore. But he was terribly weary. After the battle at Feng Yun Tavern, in which he'd killed nearly a dozen experts, both renowned and newcomers alike, he'd fought Xiao Le, who was practically his equal in strength. He'd exhausted all his energy and struggled just to hobble back. He was beyond fatigued. Yet now he was denied rest, even when healing, forced to fight another match. Feng Xiao sorted and gathered the many streams of qi, then mobilized them to fight back against the phantom of Chu Yu Wang, trying to engulf him. But his foe had lain in ambush for many days and was well prepared. As they clashed, Feng Xiao's qi was instantly weakened by a third, while his foe remained as solid and unmoved as Mount Tai. He cast Feng Xiao a mocking glare. I mean, not gonna lie, but hot. Like, if I had to be haunted by a ghostly apparition, like, you know, hot. Trash, he heard Chu Yuang say. In life, I fought the 6 most powerful grandmasters in the world. I defeated them with ease and walked away unscathed. The demonic sects grow weaker with every generation. If an incompetent like you has shown up when I was still around, forget entering the Ryue sect. I'd have struck you dead at the mountain's gates. Hot ghosts are the best ghosts, right? Feng Xiao gasped for breath as his opponent's overwhelming qi poured down on his head, creating a pressure so immense his own qi nearly buckled. He felt he was about to collapse into dust and fragments. Within the illusionary realm of his consciousness, he staggered back several steps. His limbs felt leaden, as if they were tied to heavy boulders. He was unable to raise so much as a finger. Opposite him, Chu Yuang laughed again, cold and mocking. I advise you to give up now. Did the 6 grandmasters attack you all at once, or separately? Feng Xiao asked. It was a strange experience. The figure that stood before Feng Xiao appeared to be Chu Yuang, but in fact it was the 2 Sarira he'd left behind, condensed remnants of his life's martial arts and the lingering fragments of his consciousness. Thanks to this, 2 people who should never have met in life shared an encounter that transcended time and space. Chu Yuang snorted coldly. Of course it was all at once. Then you're lying. Even if you were the strongest martial artist back then, it's impossible for you to handle 6 martial arts grandmasters at the same time. Fool! Chu Yuang shouted. Do you think the strongest of my era were comparable to the half-hearted masters you're producing now? If my venerable self wishes to kill you, I can do it as easily as crushing an ant. Then go ahead! Feng Xiao appeared unconcerned. Don't hold back. Who knows, maybe you'll seize my body like one of the deities and reincarnate as a human. I left behind 2 Sarira. How do you know I can't? Chu Wang asked darkly. Feng Xiao laughed. Because that's why you're hesitating. Destroy me, and you'll destroy yourself too. You can't bear to do that. After all these years, though you're just a Sarira, you still possess some of the consciousness Chu Yuang left behind. Finally found someone to spar and talk with. How could you bear to destroy me? The figure trembled slightly as if Feng Xiao had struck a nerve, and now it was reconsidering. Feng Xiao would never let go of a chance to destroy an enemy. Even if the man in front of him was a legendary master from his own sect, he didn't hesitate to launch a counterattack. Sir! Pei Jingzi looked on in horror as Feng Xiao's body shuddered, blood trickling from his mouth and nose. Feng Xiao's eyes were squeezed shut. He couldn't hear Pei Jingzi's shouts. His complexion, which had been a pallid green, now began to turn faintly yellow, embodying that classic simile used to describe the dead. A face like gold leaf. Gold was a beautiful color, but if a martial arts practitioner showed such a complexion, death was nigh. After swallowing the 3 ice fungus pills, Feng Xiao's color had improved slightly. But just when everyone thought his condition was improving, it took a sudden turn for the worse. Ming Yue had said Feng Xiao was fighting desperately against his inner demons. There were only 2 possible outcomes of such a battle. If he succeeded, he'd live. If he failed, he'd die. Chubuchu stood quietly for a moment before turning to leave, prepared to deal with his own pressing business. Had he not given Feng Xiao his own emergency pills, and had Xiao Xian's expression not been so grave, Pei Jingzi might have thought Chubuchu didn't care a whit if Feng Xiao died, that maybe he was even secretly glad. Today, the proud and infallible Deputy Chief Feng might really falter. Pei Jingzi sighed to himself. In his eyes, Feng Xiao was practically omnipotent. He refused to entertain such a possibility. He didn't dare touch Feng Xiao. His skin burned like fire, and the slightest contact would lead to unexpected consequences. If your lordship wakes up, we can discuss docking my pay again, Pei Jingzi said through gritted teeth, his heart aching. He thought for a while and added silently, Doesn't your lordship love making things difficult for Chu Xiansheng? If something happens to you, the court will send someone else to manage the Jijian Bureau, and Chu Xiansheng will quickly forget his old rival. He didn't know if any of his words would touch Feng Xiao's heart. The two streams of qi within Feng Xiao were entwined in a life-or-death showdown, locked in a stalemate. Chu Yuwang's qi swept toward Feng Xiao like a cresting wave, yet Feng Xiao blocked it before it could break. Feng Xiao wasn't merely defending. He sought any opportunity to counterattack, cunningly waiting to strike. Chu Yuwang was furious. "You rat! You don't deserve to call yourself a member of the demonic sects." "Do you really fancy yourself Chu Yuwang?" Feng Xiao asked. "You're just Tu Sarira he left behind after the death of his body and soul when he failed in his climb to the martial summit. Even if the real Chu Yuwang stood before me, I'd still tell him." In the depths of Feng Xiao's mind, it was perfectly clear to him that this so-called Chu Yuwang was just a phantom created by the qi deviation. Maybe the phantom really had inherited Chu Yuwang's qi, but ultimately it was an outside invader incompatible with Feng Xiao's martial arts. If he couldn't force this qi into submission and make it his own, what awaited him was a fate identical to Chu Yuwang's. This was likely the most dangerous challenge he'd faced in his martial training, but Feng Xiao had always grown stronger with each challenge he met. He had never known compromise or surrender. Maybe there was someone out there who could force him to concede, but it certainly wouldn't be here and now. Foreshadowing, I suppose? And that there's always a higher sky and always a better man. With those bold words, Feng Xiao surged forward and hemmed Chu Yuwang in from the front and rear. After biding his time and regulating his breathing, he was officially ready to declare war on the enemy. Chu Yuwang roared with rage. He too fought without hesitation. A violent tremor went through Feng Xiao as a dazzling light erupted before him. He felt as if his whole body was burning, his blood boiling, yearning to burst the confines of his skin and explode outward. His veins twisted and turned, washing him in waves of agony like the tossing sea. After an indeterminate amount of time, the pain and turmoil finally subdued. Feng Xiao slowly opened his eyes. Chu Yuwang had vanished. The phantom was nowhere to be found. Feng Xiao's body felt warm and languid both inside and out. It was the feeling of defeating his enemy, so wonderful. His muscles, bones, blood, and flesh groaned in comfort. Before him was a stretch of luxuriant green, like a field of newly planted seedlings, a swaying bamboo grove, or a pond layered in lotus leaves, gently soothing away his fatigue after the fierce battle. A figure stood in the middle of the dense green, smiling at him. Feng Xiao twitched his fingers, and the man came to him. His sickly face was familiar. He met Feng Xiao's eyes, but said nothing, letting Feng Xiao's fingers brush over his face and open his collar, revealing skin that had spent years away from the sun. Ho! That's a shameless 101. Chubuchu touched Feng Xiao's wrist and sighed softly. Xiao Le is dead. Feng Xiao was momentarily stunned. How did he die? He was seriously injured after your battle, Chubuchu said. Ming Yue led his people in pursuit and killed him. So the bandit leader has met his end, and the 13 floors are a headless dragon, Feng Xiao said in relief. They won't make trouble for us again. Chubuchu smiled faintly. And it's all thanks to you. Of course, I'll request the Emperor recognize your accomplishments. Feng Xiao also smiled. You don't need to make any request. I just want you to do one thing. He lifted Chubuchu's chin, and a soft flush rose on that pale cheek. Chubuchu seemed to want to step back, but unusually he stayed put with a look of forbearance that was very fetching. Feng Xiao dipped his head to kiss him, then paused. Chubuchu looked up at him, bewildered. Feng Xiao sneered. So you can even peek at my inner demons and confuse me. Not bad. His fingers curled, mercilessly closing around Chubuchu's throat. He squeezed, and in an instant, Chubuchu crumbled to dust. How did you realize? His enemy's voice drifted into his ears, faint and tinged with grudging defeat. Feng Xiao laughed. All you can conjure is the Chubuchu in my fantasies. The real Chubuchu would never say it was all thanks to me. I mean, he's not wrong. Throughout the duel of both wits and strength, he'd begun to understand the rules of this dreamscape and fashioned an additional fantasy in a corner of his mind. Sure enough, the snake had emerged from its lair and fallen into his trap. Snake? Love that Feng Xiao's like, nah, he's not real, he's too nice. It felt as if a dust-covered table had been wiped clean. His soul was again pure and bright. His roiling qi slowly calmed, then quickly began to gather once more. Great sounds come in whispers, great forms possess no shape, which is from chapter 41 of the Tao Te Ching, one of the two foundational texts of Taoism attributed to Lao Tzu. Feng Xiao discovered that, by chance, his martial arts seemed to have advanced yet again. Chu Yuang, you've lost! Every seat in the guest hall of the governor's residence was filled, yet the silence was deafening. Almost all the prominent households in the county had received an invitation they couldn't refuse. When Rongqing's missive had arrived at the Li family residence, the patriarch had begged illness and sent an unfavored son out to deal with it. He hadn't expected the guards who came knocking to drag him, ill or not, from his bed and bring him here. The Li family was only the start. The Ding, Xiao, Wang, and others had undergone the same treatment. Everyone sat in silence, resolute in their strategy of passive resistance. No matter what Rongqing said, they refused to speak. After all, the main culprits behind the embezzlement were Yang Yun, Li Yan, and Wu Yi. They'd already been arrested. The families here had only assisted them under duress, and Chubuchu had said that those who had merely followed orders would be forgiven. Rongqing wouldn't dare put any of the prominent families in the county to death for this. Rongqing had taken the time to have a word with them before Chubuchu arrived. After all, soft words and courtesy should come first, reproof and punishment later. He tried appealing to reason and sentiment. He explained that the imperial granaries had no more grain to send, that if the victims grew desperate and violent, the first people they'd turn on would be the families present, that this was a matter that concerned everyone's safety. He pleaded for them to keep the bigger picture in mind. He spoke so earnestly for so long that he felt as though his throat was smoking when he finished. But those stubborn old tortoises refused to budge. They hid like quails in the grass, not a one of them willing to step forward. Rongqing was livid with fury. At last, even he ran out of patience. He slammed a hand on the table and instructed Pei Jingzi to read from the account book Li Yan had provided. Which family had benefited most from the tax exemption policy? Everything was recorded in black and white. No one could avoid their responsibilities. If they continued to stall, fine. Rongqing had all day. The patriarch of the Li family was first to speak. Censor Rong is an intelligent man. Governor Yang made many grand promises when the tax exemption policy was introduced, but in practice we received only a fraction more grain compared to previous years. After the flood this year, the grain was entirely depleted. We're all going hungry. Where are we supposed to find the extra grain to feed the refugees? If your lordship doesn't believe us, take someone and conduct a search. Obviously, he wasn't afraid of what Rongqing might find. If Rongqing's search turned up empty, those same people would use their connections in court to file a complaint against him for abusing his position. Rongqing had seen the tragic state of the refugees after the flood, and he now hated these people even more. He longed to send someone to turn all their manners upside down. It was then that Chubuchu arrived. He came without fanfare and without anyone to accompany him. He held a small hand warmer, and his cloak was wrapped tight around him as he walked soundlessly through the courtyard to reach the gates. He coughed a few times, which brought some color to his cheeks, pallid from the cold. With the exception of Rong Qing and Pei Jingzi, everyone's faces went rigid, as if they had spotted a great enemy. Some of the young men glanced at him furtively. The Shuyu Bureau chief didn't return their glances. He looked straight ahead as he walked to the seat of honor and settled himself, his brow etched with weariness and his thin lips pale. From the side, they appeared to curl slightly upward in something like a smile, yet not, as if at any moment he might make someone suffer until they wished for death. The patriarch of the Li family felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. He shut his mouth with a snap and resumed his quail act. But Chubuchu didn't ask him any questions. Instead, he said, "Before we begin, please invite Governor Yang over. I'd like to have a talk with him." And that is where we're ending tonight. And it is the end of book 4, which means that we will be moving on to book 5, our final book of Peerless, next Tuesday, which is very, very, very exciting. It will also mean that I will be showing off goodies and have the blind box on Tuesday. So it's probably going to be a longer stream, just a heads up. But yes, thank you all so much, everyone, for listening. For all those that joined live, I hope you had a great time and enjoyed all the surprises with me. And for those listening later, I hope you did as well. No triggers today, so that's nice. We had some good stuff in here. I kind of like how Feng Xiao defeated his inner demons because he was like, not too nice. Thank you. I will have an absolutely amazing weekend. I'm ready. I'm definitely ready. I'm glad these are some of your favorite scenes. I cannot wait to see what happens in the last book, and how they tie up the loose ends, because I think it will be fantastic. But in any case, have a fantastic rest of your evening, and I will see you next time. Good night, everybody.